Chapter 152. The pea pod pointed to the queue in front of them and kindly reminded, "Quickly change back to your human form. It'll be easier for the great immortals to register." Ah! Zhu Yao was startled. No need. She did not want to turn back into a jade pendant. Seeing that she was unwilling, the pea pod didn't try to persuade her again, and lined up behind her seriously. Gooden explained at the side. There were many spiritual monsters that wanted to enter the Advent Cloud Hall, so in order to facilitate the registration, everyone would change back to their original forms and speed up the registration process. In order to avoid causing chaos, the people lining up here were basically all plants, and there was even an animal farm next to it. Zhu Yao turned her head and looked through the half-open door to look next door. As expected, the house was filled with animals. Chickens, ducks, geese, rabbits, everything was there. Looks like this Advent Cloud Hall is quite popular. So many people want to enter. Then what about human practitioners? Zhu Yao could not help but ask. Human cultivators don't need to register. As long as they are willing, they can join. So that was how it was. Zhu Yao and Gooden queued for exactly 4 hours before it was their turn. The person in charge of the registration was an Earth Immortal, who seemed to be very indifferent. "Does it have a name?" "Yes, great deity. My name is Li Gooden." Gooden answered proudly. The Earth Immortal's hand paused, and he woke up from his drowsiness. He raised his head and glanced at Gooden in surprise. This name was Tu. Zhu Yao silently turned her head around. "What's the prototype?" "Oh, I'm an arrow." That person looked at him strangely again, and Godan raised his head proudly again. The corner of the Earth Immortal's mouth twitched as he noted it down on the Immortal Register. He then looked at Zhu Yao behind him. "Next, what is your name?" Zhu Yao hesitated for a moment. Since she had to hide her identity, naturally, she could not reveal her Taoist name. Seeing that she did not speak, Gooden answered for her. "I was with her. She called me Pa." Zhu Yao pressed him onto the table with a single slap. "Break your sister. You're the one who slit your throat." "My surname is Zhu." It was just that she couldn't use the surname of Yu, but it didn't matter if her surname was Zhu. The Earth Immortal looked at them strangely. Original form? A jade stone. Only then did he jot it down on the Immortal Register. Gooden, on the other hand, looked at her strangely, though he could sense that Zhu Yao wasn't a deity practitioner in the first place. But he didn't expect it to be a piece of jade. No wonder it hurt so much. After registering, they were brought to a room. There were only 4 demons in the room, and they were all plants. He took a closer look and saw that there was a pea pod and a carrot, a stalk of garlic and a cabbage. Once they arrived, after making many turns, they actually arrived at a body of water. In front of them was a boundless silver ocean. There were a few scattered people on the beach. "It's a rabbit and a weasel." The Earth Immortal who led them here threw out a paper boat. The speed of the paper boat increased, and in a short while, it had turned into a large boat that could hold more than 10 people. "Get on the boat," the Earth Immortal said to the animals and plants present. "The Advent Cloud Hall is after this region of water. So long as you arrive there, you'll have passed the first test of the entrance test. Get on board together?" Zhu Yao was startled for a moment. Including those 2 animals? Wouldn't something go wrong like this? The vegetables panicked and looked at each other in dismay. "Hey, rabbit, could you please restrain yourself and stop drooling over the carrots?" "Great Immortal, are we really going to be on the same boat as them? Are there any other?" The Earth Immortal who led the way coldly looked at the vegetables. "What nonsense are you spouting? If you don't wish to board, you can choose not to." The vegetables instantly turned silent, and obediently boarded the boat. Though the rabbit's red eyes turned even redder. The only one who was calm was the weasel at the side. He merely glanced at the rabbit when he boarded the boat, and then immediately retracted his gaze. His sharp mouth was raised high. The moment they boarded the boat, everyone consciously returned to their human forms. Only then did Zhu Yao clearly see the genders of these animals and plants. The pea pod, garlic, and weasel were 3 young men, while the carrot and cabbage were 2 young ladies. Unexpectedly, the rabbit was actually a fatty. His stomach was so big that it looked like a swimming ring. His eyes were still staring at the carrot lady, and he did not even blink. The atmosphere was especially tense. Let's get to know each other. The Peapod youth was the first to stand out, and said with a friendly look, I wonder how I should address everyone. With someone breaking the silence, the others heaved sighs of relief as well. The rabbit gulped. I'm Whitey. Yellow Yellow. The weasel followed up. The carrot said, I'm Popo. Zhu Yao's expression darkened when she heard this. Whitey Yellow Yellow Popo. Aren't these names a little too casually? I'm even called Kai Kai. I'm Kai Kai. The little cabbage lady stood out. Zhu Yao instantly felt stifled. Do your parents know that you guys gave your names so casually? At that moment, she felt that not only were these spiritual monsters' cultivation levels low, their intelligence didn't seem to be high either. She silently glanced at Gooden at the side. Alright, his name didn't seem to be very high-end either. Not even a moment later, the animals and plants announced their names, and finally, it was her and Gooden's turn. Gooden proudly patted his chest and loudly said, I'm Lee Gooden. When his voice fell, Zhu Yao instantly felt the gazes of all the spiritual monsters in the boat gathered onto Gooden. This fool, no matter how bad his name is, there's no need to give up on himself. Look, as expected, he's being looked down upon. What a great name. In an instant, all the vegetables and animals squeezed over and looked at Gooden with worshipful expressions. Your name actually has 3 words. That's right, it's the same as those great deities. Brotherly, how did you think of this name? You even have a surname, so your cultivation level must be very high as well, right? Zhu Yao. This doesn't seem right? Hee hee, it's alright. Gooden scratched his head a little embarrassedly. My name was given to me by boss. He pointed at Zhu Yao, who had long been squeezed out of the crowd. In an instant, their gazes once again turned towards Zhu Yao. Zhu Yao brought out the name she just came up with. I'm Zhupu. In an instant, those sparkling eyes that were filled with anticipation instantly extinguished. What? It's also 2 words. And here I thought her name would be even better. That's right, it should have 4 words, right? Is the quality of a name determined by the number of words it has? Where did you guys learn your sense of beauty from? I really hope I have a name as beautiful as Lee Gooden. The rabbit demon said with an intoxicated expression. The crowd of vegetables chimed in and continued to look at student Gooden with worshipful eyes. Zhu Yao. That what was so wonderful about this name? Heaving a sigh, she decided to ignore these spiritual monsters who had an abnormal sense of aesthetics. Zhu Yao turned her head and asked the earth deity who was leading the way at the shore. Great deity, may I know when we can set sail? The earth immortal who was leading the way looked back at her. Perhaps he saw that she was a Xian immortal. He didn't look down on her like he did the other spiritual monsters. Fellow Taoist, there's no need to be anxious. Your group is still lacking 1 person. Once everyone is here, we can set sail. Lack of manpower? She wanted to clarify. Suddenly, he heard banging sounds coming from not far away. Even the ground was shaking. He's here, said the earth immortal. Not far away, a cylindrical figure was bouncing over. Every time it bounced, it would raise a lot of dust. It was actually a pure white mushroom. Goo goo. Zhu Yao could not help but shout out. That mushroom was startled. He raised his mushroom umbrella and looked towards the boat. Looking at her from head to toe, he tilted his mushroom umbrella and called out, Gua. What's with this feeling of reunion after 16 years? As though he had already confirmed it. The mushroom exerted strength, and with a plop, he jumped onto the boat. Boom! He smashed a hole through the boat. Everyone. Gua? Gua, is that you? I've been looking for you for so long. The mushroom moved, and then pounced towards her. He looked as though he was so excited that he could only use a hug to express it. Zhu Yao reacted quickly, and immediately took a step back. A hole had already been smashed through the boat. If she was to be squashed by it, wouldn't she be turned into a meat patty? Mushroom, why are you here? To look for you. The mushroom looked at her with teary eyes. You've taken human form? He curiously sized Zhu Yao up, and then satisfyingly raised his mushroom head. Not bad. As expected of a jade spirit that I mixed with. You've only taken human form a little later than me. You're able to take human form as well. It had only been a few months since they last met. Not bad, huh? Of course, the mushroom said with a proud look. My cultivation has risen by a lot. Oh right, just where did you go? I searched the entire forest, but I didn't see you. It's a long story. What's going on with the two of you? Just as Zhu Yao was about to explain, she was interrupted by the earth deity at the shore with a darkened expression. Did you destroy the boat because you don't want to go to Advent Cloud Hall anymore? Only then did Zhu Yao realize that this wasn't the time to reminisce. She gave the mushroom a "we'll talk about it later" expression, and then turned to apologize to the earth deity. Great deity, please forgive me. I was simply too excited to reunite with this friend of mine. Even if you're excited, you can't destroy the boat. That earth deity's face was still filled with rage. I'll repair the boat right now. Zhu Yao cast a recovery art, and the large hole that was smashed by the mushroom quickly returned to its original state. The damaged area had also recovered to the point where not even a single trace of it could be seen. Only then did that person's expression turn a little better. He moved his mouth, but he did not say anything out of consideration for Zhu Yao's profound deity cultivation. He loudly shouted, "You guys can set sail now." The boat then automatically slid into the sea and sailed towards the vast sea. The mushroom hopped towards him. Its figure was huge, and with every hop, the entire boat would tremble 3 times. With 2 or 3 hops, it had successfully pulled the aggro of all the animals and plants on the boat. Jade spirit, let me tell you. Yet it was completely oblivious. His entire mushroom body was filled with the excitement of meeting her again. It's best if you return to your human form for now. His cultivation had risen, but he shouldn't give up on his intelligence. Can't you see that the rabbit isn't even looking at the carrot, and is instead drooling at you? The mushroom was startled for a moment, revealing an extremely unwilling look. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "All right, I'll let you see my heroic appearance in human form." The mushroom closed his eyes, circulating the spiritual energy in his body. His entire body was glowing with a white light, enveloping the entire mushroom within. His gigantic figure began to shrink as well, slowly condensing into a human form. A moment later, the white light slowly faded, and the face that was revealed. Zhu Yao simply felt her heart trembling as she fiercely widened her eyes. Chapter 153. Gugu was a very principled mushroom. The moment she opened her eyes, she was already in that forest. In the beginning, there were many other mushrooms beside her, filling up the land under the big tree. During the day, she would eat dew, and at night, bask in the moonlight. Her life could be considered to be quite enjoyable. Unfortunately, the other mushrooms could not speak, only she was different. This made her wonder if she had grown crooked. Later on, the mushrooms under the tree were all eaten by the other small animals, leaving her alone. Thus, her leisurely days had one more worry: don't get eaten. Every day before she slept, she would recite this sentence. She did not know if it was really useful, but after so many years, the mushrooms beside her grew batch after batch, and were also eaten batch after batch, only she was still planted there. Only when she could finally leave that land did she understand that the reason why she could speak was because she had become a spirit. Those normal animals could not eat her. Knowing that she did not grow crooked, the mushroom was very happy. However, she still could not find anyone to talk to in the forest. This made her feel very lonely. Until one day, a rock spirit fell into her house. Finally, there was someone to talk to. The mushroom was very happy, and told the rock spirit all the words that had accumulated for thousands of years. The rock spirit was a very good listener. No matter how long he spoke, she would listen patiently. Of course, this could also be because she could not move, but the mushroom felt that other than drinking dew and basking in the moonlight, this was the happiest thing. However, these days did not last long. That female deity who specialized in eating mushrooms appeared. The rock spirit called her little bitch, and helped him think of a way to chase away that female deity. Unfortunately, this method was seen through by that female deity called little bitch. The mushroom was very worried that she would be eaten, but he never expected that. The little bitch's target was not him, but the rock spirit. So humans did not like to eat mushrooms but rocks. How scary. At the crucial moment, the little bitch was scared away by the heavenly lightning. She hurriedly dodged the heavenly lightning, but accidentally lost the rock spirit. She went back to search many times, and even turned the entire forest upside down. She still could not find the rock spirit. Without the rock spirit, the forest returned to how it was before. It was completely peaceful. The mushroom had lived like this for thousands of years, but now, he suddenly felt that it was unbearable. After searching for a few more days, he still could not find the rock spirit. Mushroom felt that it must have been taken away by that little bitch. Thinking about how the pitiful rock spirit would be eaten by that person bite by bite, the mushroom felt very remorseful. Thus, he decided to head out to find the rock spirit. It walked out of the forest and went to many places. He also understood some things that he didn't know in the past. Only then did he realize that not all human cultivators ate stones. The rock spirit was so unlucky. Was he still alive? Its battle of wits was reignited, and it went around asking for news about the little bitch immortal and the rock spirit. Later on, he finally discovered that female immortal. In order to obtain news of the rock spirit, he followed it all the way. Then he arrived at a place with a lot of people queuing up. In order not to be discovered by the little bitch, it had mixed into a pile of vegetable spirits, and ended up on this boat. He had finally found the stone spirit that had been missing for a long time. Moreover, she actually managed to cultivate a human form. She was indeed a monster that had mingled with him before. It was just that amazing. The mushroom was delighted, and transformed into a human form as well. However, the rock spirit was dumbfounded. It stared at him for a long time without saying anything. Could it be that his appearance was too handsome, causing the rock spirit to be dumbfounded? The mushroom felt that this was very possible. Hence he patiently waited for a few minutes, allowing the rock spirit to get used to it. However, she still did not speak. The mushroom could not endure it any longer. He reached out his hand and pushed. Rock spirit? Rock spirit? Rock spirit? Jade spirit? Guh. Only then did she react. She once again swept a glance at the man in front of her, and hesitantly spoke up. You're Shuji? The mushroom was startled for a moment. Rock spirit, what's wrong? I'm mushroom. Mushroom. Zhu Yao was dumbfounded for a moment, however, her heart was already in turmoil. She grabbed onto the person in front of her. Mushroom, do you have another name? I mean something like a surname? The mushroom lowered his head and pondered for a moment. My surname is Mushroom? That's not what I meant. Zhu Yao grew anxious. I'm saying, do you remember me? The mushroom looked at her strangely. Rock spirit, have you gone silly? I'm here to look for you. How can I not remember you? I'm saying, Zhu Yao, your big sis Zhu Yao. And Little Wimp. Do you remember the name Little Wimp? The mushroom shook his head. Zhu Yao instantly felt her heart sink, and a heart-piercing chill surfaced. How was that possible? Clearly this face looked exactly the same. This was clearly Wang Shuji, her little wimp. How could he not remember her? Think about it again. Do you really not remember? Ancient Hill Sect, Jade Forest Mountain, and your father, Dr. Wang? Rock spirit, are you alright? The mushroom finally realized that she was a little strange. Think about it again, alright? Realm Spirit had said that she could still see Wang Shuji. This face was clearly his. How could he not remember? Rock. Don't be anxious. I'll think about it, alright? Such an abnormal rock spirit caused the mushroom to panic a little, as he seriously thought about it. Zhu Yao clenched her fists. It's Wang Shuji, right? He's back. Yu Yao, it's not him. Yu Yan's voice resounded in her mind, and Zhu Yao instantly felt a chill in her heart. This mushroom has cultivated for at least 4,000 years. But Zhu Yao subconsciously wanted to refute. Realm Spirit said that he would return. Clearly, they look exactly the same. There are similarities between humans, not to mention, they're merely the forms of spirits. But no matter how similar they are, how can they possibly be exactly the same? Yu Yao. Yu Yan's voice, however, grew even calmer. It's not him. You know that as well. Zhu Yao sank into silence. Indeed, she was actually very clear that the mushroom was not Wang Xuji. Wang Xuji had only left for 1,000 years, and the mushroom's cultivation time basically did not match up with him. Even if they were the same person, how could they have the memories of their past lives? In the end, she was merely deceiving herself. Rock spirit, I've thought about it. The mushroom came closer and looked at her with a hesitant look. Those people you mentioned, I really don't know them. Amen. I know. Zhu Yao took a deep breath and rubbed her face. She was the one who was stuck in a dead end. Wang Xuji's matter dealt a huge blow to her, and it had already left a wound in her heart. Hence, when she saw a similar face, she wanted to hold on to it tightly without letting go. This was the knot in her heart. Thank you, mushroom. Although Realm Spirit had said that they could meet again, then she just had to wait. What are you thanking me for? I've said that I will protect you. The mushroom patted on his chest. Don't be like this, it's a little scary. If you're really unhappy, I can pretend to know those people too. If this guy was really Wang Xuji, she wouldn't agree to it either. Zhu Yao took a deep breath, and in an instant the gloominess in her chest completely dissipated. Oh right, mushroom. Are you going to join the Advent Cloud Hall as well? Advent Cloud Hall. The mushroom was startled for a moment. What mushroom is that? That wasn't a mushroom. Zhu Yao's head hurt a little. If you're not going to join the Advent Cloud Hall, then why are you queuing up to register? I saw that little bitch, and in order to save you, I queued up as well. The mushroom said with a stern look. Rock spirit, you're right. As expected, that little bitch isn't a good person. I've seen many human practitioners, but she's the only one who eats rocks. The hell was eating rocks? Oh right, rock spirit. How did you escape? Where's that little bitch who captured you? I wasn't captured. So he had always thought that she was captured by that fake female deity. That day, I was saved by someone else. Oh, so that's the case. The mushroom nodded. It's no wonder I couldn't find you. I must have missed you. Zhu Yao felt a little guilty. Theoretically speaking, they had not interacted for a long time, and they had merely met by chance. She never expected that the mushroom would leave that forest in order to find her. Back then, he wasn't even willing to move away from the bottom of the tree. Zhu Yao told the mushroom about her plans to enter the Advent Cloud Hall. Initially, she wanted to persuade it to return to the forest, but the mushroom did not have much else, but it had a strong sense of brotherhood. Hence, it immediately expressed that it would join the Advent Cloud Hall with her. The wooden ship drifted on the sea for several days. Initially, Zhu Yao had thought that the so-called entrance examination would definitely experience some storms, and at the very least, there would be some accidents that would test everyone. However, a few days had passed, and the sea was calm. The ship was so stable that it did not even tremble a little. Could it really be that they had passed this test just by crossing the sea? Was this test called the 8 deities crossing the sea? Just as Zhu Yao was puzzled, there was finally some movement on the quiet ship. Io, who bit my buttocks? The chatterbox mushroom, who had been sitting next to her the entire time, suddenly let out a cry. With a swoosh, he leaped up and rubbed his handsome buttocks. Zhu Yao looked over and saw a lump of meat was currently squatting behind him. It was the fat rabbit spirit, Whitey. Currently, he was desperately covering his mouth. As he wailed, he rolled all over the ground, and his fingers were even suffused with red bloodstains. My teeth. Stupid rabbit, what did you do? The weasel spirit walked over and picked up the fatty on the ground. The rabbit spirit covered his mouth and did not reply. The mushroom said with a furious look. It bit my buttocks earlier. The weasel lowered his head and glared at the rabbit spirit. Only then did the other party cover his mouth, which was still bleeding, and stuttered. I'm hungry. Who knew it would be so hard? It had only taken a single bite, yet 4 of its teeth were knocked out. This thing was definitely not a mushroom, but a rock, right? How many times have I told you? The weasel raised his hand and slapped towards the fatty's head. You've already taken on a human form, yet you still can't control your instincts. You pounce on vegetables the moment you see them. I'm hungry. The rabbit looked at the weasel youth with a teary face, yet he was forced to apologize to the mushroom in an aggrieved manner. Zhu Yao felt like laughing when she saw this. That rabbit's cultivation level was not high, and it seemed to have just taken on a human form. Animals had wild instincts that were hard to tame in the first place, so it was hard for him to not be tempted when he saw the ship filled with vegetables. Yet, out of all the things he could bite, he chose to bite the mushroom. She had witnessed the strength of the mushroom's original form. With a single leap, he could even smash a hole in the ground, so how could the rabbit spirit bite through it? Chapter 154. This trial tested one's nature, which was why the vegetables and the rabbit, who were natural enemies, were put in the same boat. The weasel was also the rabbit's natural enemy, but it was obvious that its cultivation was much higher than the others, and it seemed to have known the rabbit for many years. It seemed that as long as one spirit monster was missing on the ship, the whole ship would fail. After being scolded by the weasel, the rabbit no longer stared at the mushroom with sparkling eyes. But after the commotion, all the vegetables on the ship subconsciously covered their butts and moved away from the rabbit. Due to the favorable impression they had of his name, everyone started to lean towards Eggface, as if he was their leader. Rock Spirit, don't be afraid. If that rabbit comes over again, I will stomp it to death. Mushroom patted his chest and guaranteed. Zhu Yao's expression darkened. How did you know that rabbits eat rocks? The ship continued sailing for another 2 days before they could faintly see the shore. It was a small island with a lush forest on it. There was someone waiting at the shore. Compared to the indifference of the staff at the registration, this disciple was much more enthusiastic. This was especially so when he finished counting the people on the ship and realized that no one was missing. Fellow immortal friends, congratulations on passing the first stage. Now, as long as you pass through the forest in front and pass the immortal leading ladder, you will pass the second stage. That person pointed to a small path in the forest. Taking a closer look, one could see that there was a small path paved with stones in the forest, winding its way towards the depths of the forest. Zhu Yao and the others got off the boat and stepped onto that path. This time, Rabbit and Weasel walked at the very front, while Zhu Yao and Mushroom walked in the middle. Gooden pulled a large wave of vegetables and followed behind. There were no twists and turns along the way. After walking for about an hour, their eyes suddenly opened up. The towering trees around them were gone, replaced by a grassland. In the middle of the meadow was a flight of stairs that led directly into the clouds. This must be the immortal leading ladder that the person on the shore spoke of. However, the staircase was rather special. It was paved with pieces of jade, and there were no handrails around it. From afar, it looked like pieces of stone were floating in the air in an orderly manner. It smells so good, Carrot suddenly said from behind. The garlic sprite also nodded. Yeah, it smells so good. It seems like it's coming from underground. I smell it too. It really smells nice. Little Cabbage took a step forward. His face was filled with yearning. Zhu Yao took a whiff. Other than the smell of soil and grass, there wasn't any other fragrance in the air. However, more and more people smelled the fragrance. The only ones who were as confused as her were the dog fart and the 2 animal spirits. Even the mushroom could smell the fragrance. Zhu Yao faintly felt that something was amiss. Could it be that only plants could smell that fragrance? There's something underground over there. The peapod pointed to the ground under the immortal staircase and hurried over. He used both his hands and feet to pull out the unexpectedly lush weeds around him, and was stunned. This is. When they got closer, they saw that the land was different from the others. It was blood red, and it seemed to be alive. It swayed like water ripples. Breathing soil, it's definitely breathing soil, Garlic exclaimed in surprise. Without saying anything further, it jumped into the soil. In less than a moment, it transformed back into its original form, a green onion sprout. For a moment, the whole garlic looked even more crispy. It seemed to have absorbed sufficient nutrients. It really is breathing soil. The little cabbage girl was moved as well. Breathing soil was the soil used by the creation god to create things during the creation of the heavens and earth. It was the most perfect sacred ground in the hearts of all plants. As a spiritual monster that was born and grew in soil, it naturally could not resist a soil like this. I want to live here as well. Hence, it immediately transformed back into its original form and planted itself into the red soil. Zhu Yao faintly felt that this breathing soil was a little strange. Most probably it was intentionally set up by the Advent Cloud Hall. However, the vegetables at the side still threw themselves into it without any hesitation. Even the pea pod, which had been calm the entire time, was moved. Its body emitted out a green light, as though it was about to transform back into its original form. Zhu Yao could not help but remind it. Pishu. No pea pod. Aren't you guys planning to go to the Advent Cloud Hall? The pea pod was startled for a moment and did not reply. Instead, the garlic said, "We have already found the breathing soil, so what does it matter if we go to the Advent Cloud Hall or not?" Only then did the pea pod anxiously transform back into its original form and planted itself into the red soil together with the other vegetables. It seemed like this bunch of vegetables were destined to be eliminated. Actually, the test for this stage was the same as the previous one. However, the previous stage was to see if the animals were able to control their instincts, while this stage was to see if the plants were able to withstand the temptation of the breathing soil. Out of a perfectly good 9-man team, 5 of them went down at once. Zhu Yao sighed. Everyone had their own ambitions, and she couldn't forcefully pull them out either. Hence, she walked up the floating stairs with the remaining people. She lowered her head and looked at the unmoving vegetables below her. She did not know if it was her imagination, but although their original forms were growing more and more green, she faintly felt that something was flowing out from their bodies. "Master." Zhu Yao transmitted her voice into her divine sense. "That red soil, is it really the breathing soil?" "Amen." Yu Yan gave a definite answer. "The breathing soil does indeed grow by borrowing the power of plants, but it's still just plants." "Ah, you're saying they have long turned into spirits and have already broken away from the nature of plants in the first place. If they were to stay in the breathing soil for a long period of time, they would simply return to being normal plants." Return to being normal plants? In other words, they would once again return to being normal vegetables? Then should I remind them? Yu Yao, in the path of cultivation, the greatest taboo is an unstable Dao heart. They do not have a righteous Dao heart in the first place, which is why they were enticed by the breathing soil, and were willing to return to their original forms. Even if you forcefully pull them out today, as long as they do not dare to change their original hearts, they would still return to this place in the future. Zhu Yao once again glanced at the ground and sighed. She was a little curious about the mushroom, which was completely uninterested in the breathing soil. Could it be that because its cultivation was high, it was already able to engrave its true nature? "Mushroom, why didn't you stay with them?" The mushroom tilted its head and glanced at the ground with a disgusted look. "I don't want to stay in such a dirty place. How can this place be as good as my home? The soil is soft, and there's even a big tree to cover it." "Alright, this was a home, buddy. Rock spirit, don't worry. Once you're done with your matters, we will return. I will let you stay in my home as well." The mushroom patted on its chest with a righteous look. "I won't despise you. You can't be talking about that dirt pit, right? She despise him, alright?" "That's right," the mushroom said with a serious look. "You can't have forgotten, right? We slept together." "Who slept together with you? Speak clearly, hey, others will misunderstand." "Boss, you too?" As expected, Gooden, who had been quietly listening at the side, looked back and forth between the two of them. His face was filled with shock. A moment later, as though he had finally accepted the truth, he respectfully bowed towards the mushroom and obediently called out, "Brother-in-law." "The hell?" Zhu Yao kicked Gooden down the stairs. "Brother-in-law, your sister. What are you randomly calling out for?" "Master, listen to my explanation. Don't release any cold air into my divine sense. I'm about to freeze." The divine connecting stairway was unexpectedly long. Zhu Yao could faintly sense that divine energy was attached to the stairway, and the higher she went, the denser the divine energy became. When she was about 500 steps up, a huge fog suddenly appeared. The fog was especially thick, and even the rabbit and weasel which had climbed the stairway before them had disappeared without a trace. It seemed like on these stairs, Not only was there divine energy, there was also a test of formations. That formation was merely an ordinary illusory formation. It wasn't anything special, and anyone who knew a little about formations would be able to see through it. However, the spiritual monsters didn't know about it. The mushroom and Gooden's faces were already filled with sweat, and every step they took was extremely difficult. Zhu Yao had no choice but to occasionally stop and wait for them. She had to prevent them from getting lost in those illusory formations. According to the formations on the stairway, this divine connecting stairway should not have an end. The higher they went, the denser the divine energy, and the more severe the pressure. However, exiting the formation was very simple, as they just had to step out of the stairway. What Zhu Yao was worried about was that she did not know just which floor they had to climb to in order to be considered qualified. Hence, she could only drag the mushroom and Gooden along as much as possible. When they reached the 200th step, the mushroom and Gooden could no longer endure the pressure, and both of them collapsed on the stairway, panting heavily. Zhu Yao had no choice but to have them meditate and absorb the divine energy, while recovering their vitality. Once they had the strength, they would then continue climbing. Just like that, they walked and stopped. Zhu Yao did not know how many days had passed, and she had even forgotten to count the number of stairs. Though, in the days that she accompanied the two of them in their cultivation, she felt that her cultivation had risen by a level, from the early stages of a profound deity to the mid stages of a profound deity. The mushroom and Gooden finally reached their limits, and could no longer take another step forward. They had no choice but to retreat from the stairway together. The scenery in front of them changed. The dense fog instantly dispersed, and a divine paradise appeared in front of their eyes. Floating palaces could be seen everywhere in the sky. Every single one of them had golden bricks and jade tiles, so dazzling that it could blind a person's eyes. And among those palaces, other than the largest one at the center, the others were all floating in the surroundings. Occasionally, they would change their positions, as though they were being moved by a formation. Below them was a sea of clouds formed by layers of rainbow-colored auspicious clouds. This was the true heavenly palace. Zhu Yao silently lit a candle for the lightning divine palace, and could not help but send a voice transmission. Master, our lightning divine palace is really poor, right? Yuyan. You guys have passed. This time, the one receiving them in the sky was a late-stage earth deity, and he looked at the three of them with satisfaction. Initially, they only needed to climb 200 steps to pass, and it was rare to see a spiritual monster that had climbed an additional 50 steps. Congratulations, you guys have climbed a total of 250 steps. You guys have climbed the most out of everyone here. Even the weasel who had arrived a step earlier came over, and said enviously, I have only climbed 236 steps, and you guys have actually climbed 250. Amazing. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Why did she feel that this number was a little strange? Gooden just had to stand at the side with a complacent and excited look. Boss, did you hear that? We're 250. The three of us are all 250. Chapter 155. Next, we just need to reach the teleportation array up ahead, and enter the heavenly main hall to pass the third stage, said the immortal, guiding them as he pointed at a small mountain hovering in the air. That small mountain was only a dozen or so square meters, and the peak was a piece of flat land. There were glowing runes on it, and it seemed that an array formation had already been activated. However, there was a distance of more than 10 meters between where they were and the floating peak, separated by a large patch of white clouds. Both sides were so high that they couldn't see the ground clearly. If they were not careful, they would lose their footing and fall down, and they might not survive. However, how many of those who became spirits didn't know how to fly? Especially some bird-type spirits that became spirits. They could only flap their wings a few times. The third stage was indeed a little too simple. We just have to pass. A mountain wolf spirit asked cautiously. He didn't dare to believe that the final stage was so simple. That guide immortal nodded his head. As long as you reach Tianzheng Hall, you will be considered as official disciples of Advent Cloud Hall. Only then did the monsters feel relieved. Many of them had already activated their immortal tools, or use the cloud riding technique to fly over. The moment they landed on the ground, they were enveloped by the white flashes of light and disappeared. They must have been teleported to the Qianzheng Hall. The journey was smooth, and there was nothing out of the ordinary. With someone taking the lead, the rest of the monsters also flew over one by one. "Boss, let's go over as well." Go Dan pointed at the array in front of them and said anxiously, "Everyone's almost gone." Zhu Yao did not reply, and simply lowered her head to look at the layer of clouds between the two lands. The corner of her lips could not help but twitch a few times, and her expression darkened, because on the white cloud, there were a few familiar Chinese characters written in large song script. "Come on, step on me. What's with this arrogant spoiler? Realm Spirit, the cheat you gave me is a silly version, right?" Zhu Yao instantly felt her legs itching. Yet, she simply did not move for a long time. The Chinese characters flashed and began to appear on the screen. "You don't dare to step on me anymore, right? You're here to step on me? Step on it, step on it. If you don't step on me, then you're my grandson." Aya, this was her temper. Zhu Yao raised her leg and stepped towards the white cloud. She did not fly on her sword, nor did she use any flying arts. "Boss, what are you doing?" Gooden was shocked. He was so frightened that he reached out to stop her. "You will fall." Before he could even finish, he saw Zhu Yao's figure stop in midair. Clearly, there was nothing beneath her feet. However, it was as if he had stepped on a flat surface. Furthermore, even after a few forceful steps, he did not show any signs of falling. Gooden's eyes widened in disbelief. This is... What spell was this? "Stone Spirit. Wait for me." Seeing that Zhu Yao had walked far away, the mushroom immediately followed after her. Stepping onto the realm that was supposed to be empty, however, just like Zhu Yao, he steadily stopped in midair. It didn't even shake. "Big boss." Not only Gooden, but even the few remaining spiritual monsters were also stunned. "Gooden, why are you daydreaming?" Zhu Yao waved her hand. "Come here directly. There's an invisible bridge in the middle." "A bridge?" Gooden was taken aback. Only then did he come to his senses. He stretched out his leg and stepped on the edge. Indeed, it was not an empty space. He immediately felt relieved and eagerly followed after Zhang Xian. Though, the deity in charge of receiving them looked at the few people in the sky with a satisfied look. "I never expected that there would actually be spiritual monsters that could see through the mysteries of the sky." When the remaining spiritual monsters heard this, how could they still not understand? The third test was actually an invisible bridge. One after another, they walked over as well. "Big boss, how did you know that there's a bridge in the sky?" Gooden looked at his big boss with admiration. So many spiritual monsters had clearly flown over earlier. No one else saw it. "Ho ho." Zhu Yao gave him a bitter smile. "Because I've activated a cheat." Hurry up, let's go." Zhu Yao did not explain, and immediately stepped into the teleportation formation. However, this time, the teleportation formation did not activate immediately. Instead, it flashed a few times, and the runes on the ground began to change. Slowly, it turned into a new teleportation formation. Following a flash of red light, the last few people who walked over together with them all disappeared within the formation. They were teleported into a large hall, and there were already quite a few people waiting in the hall. After a quick count, there were more than a dozen of them. However, they were not the spiritual monsters that were teleported in before them, but deity practitioners. Every single one of them had the cultivation level of an earth deity, and they should be deities that had just ascended. Mo Xianxian was among them as well. There are actually so many spiritual monsters this time. They are actually able to see through the mysteries of the Bridge of Trials. Not bad. A loud and dignified voice resounded, and it came from the front. However, that place was merely covered in fog, and they were basically unable to see any human figures. They should have hidden themselves. Zhu Yao guessed that the one sitting there should be the manager of Advent Cloud Hall, who was in charge of the selection this time, the manager of the Human Resources Department. Rock Spirit, there are so many deity practitioners here. So scary. Mushroom worriedly tugged onto Zhu Yao's sleeves. I wonder if they eat mushrooms and rocks? Zhu Yao rubbed her forehead. Mushroom, other than worrying about being eaten, can't you have some other worries? Mushroom was suddenly startled. He pointed at a female deity not far away from them, and loudly said, "Little bitch." In an instant, all of the gazes in the hall swept towards them, including a blue-eyed deity dressed in a green dress. The hell? It really was that little bitch who was impersonating her. You spiritual monster, what nonsense are you spouting? Tao Monfeng's brows instantly frowned, as she furiously glared at Mushroom. No matter who it was, they would definitely be enraged after being pointed at and scolded in such a manner. If not because there were so many deities present, she would have long made her move. I believe that I have never offended fellow deity before. Why do you have to hurl insults at me? Mushroom was startled by her glare, and his aura instantly weakened. However, he did not forget to maintain his dignity, as he pulled Zhu Yao behind him, and softly said, "Rock Spirit, don't be afraid. I will protect you." "Then don't tremble then." Zhu Yao's expression darkened, as she pushed Mushroom away. Although the little bitch was detestable, this place wasn't suitable for revenge. This brother of mine has just taken form, and doesn't know the rules. He has recognized the wrong person. I hope fellow deity can forgive him. She and Mushroom had only met in their original forms, so she shouldn't be able to recognize them. As expected, she simply coldly swept a glance at the two of them. Due to their current situation, she coldly snorted, and then retracted her gaze. The place once again regained its silence. A moment later, that dignified voice from earlier once again resounded. "In the future, everyone will be disciples of my Advent Cloud Hall, and will receive the protection of my Advent Cloud Hall. Don't forget to work hard in your cultivation." That voice spoke for exactly an hour, yet, they were all empty words. Generally speaking, the main idea could be summarized as follows. Calling everyone to closely unite around the hall organization with the hall master as the core, to successfully push forward the cultivation business with Advent Cloud Hall's characteristics. Raising high the great banner of raising the theory of cultivation, and the important idea of ultimately becoming a god. To fully implement the concept of raising the entire population, to further strengthen the construction of Advent Cloud Hall, and to make even greater contributions to the construction of the strongest harmonious society in Advent Cloud Hall. In the end, that leader who did not show his face even shouted out a few words, which sounded like, "Today, I am proud of Advent Cloud. Tomorrow, Advent Cloud will be proud of me." In the end, this leader's speech lasted for an hour. Zhu Yao had already given them a lot of face by expressing that she did not fall asleep. Yet, the hall filled with people still looked as though they could not wait to immediately shed their blood for Advent Cloud Hall, and dedicate their entire lives to Advent Cloud. This made her feel more and more that she had entered some sort of multi-level marketing organization. Today, all of you can head down and rest. Tomorrow, there will be the entrance selection. I hope that everyone will do your best. What? Yes. The people in the hall responded in unison. After bowing in an orderly manner, they turned around and walked out one after another. What entrance selection? She completely did not hear anything about it. Zhu Yao turned around and wanted to ask Gooden, however, she did not see his figure. Looking around, she saw that he was currently attentively following next to a white-robed female deity. He went to hook up with Mo Xian so quickly. As expected, he had no humanity when it came to the opposite sex. Zhu Yao could only place her hopes on the mushroom at the side. However, she saw that he was standing there unmoving, and snoring sounds could faintly be heard. This fellow actually fell asleep while standing. Forget it, she could only take it one step at a time. Zhu Yao woke the mushroom up, and then followed the crowd out of the hall. The moment she stepped out, a disciple passed her a jade tablet with a smile. Zhu Yao received it and looked at it. On it were two words, NB. She placed it on her forehead, and a map was imprinted in her mind. It was the route to a cave residence, and it seemed like it was where she was staying today. Rock Spirit, why am I different from you? The mushroom extended his own jade tablet over, and on it were the words A and B. A moment later, Gooden shouted out, I'm a NB, who's a NB? It seemed like this cave residence was shared between two people, and the mushroom and Gooden just happened to be in the same room. Zhu Yao pulled the mushroom and walked over. Coincidentally, Emo Xianxian was actually and just happened to be in the same room as her. "Boss, can I switch with you?" Gooden said with an expectant look. The mushroom immediately responded. Sure, Rock Spirit. I'm not used to sleeping with others, so I still prefer sleeping with you." Scram. Who wants to sleep with you? Don't say words that will cause misunderstandings, hey. Emo Xianxian did not have much of a reaction, and simply looked at her and Gooden doubtfully. She then turned around and summoned her flying sword. "Fellow deity Zhu, do you want to travel together?" Zhu Yao nodded. Zhu Yao waved at the mushroom and Gooden, and then, together with Emo Xianxian, headed towards the direction indicated on the map. They did not speak along the way. A moment later, the two of them arrived on top of a small isolated mountain. On top of the mountain, there was a small 3-story building, and in front of it, there was even a rather big courtyard. A defensive formation was set up outside the courtyard. They placed the jade tablet on the door plate of the courtyard, and the formation automatically opened. The courtyard seemed to be set up with a formation that gathered divine energy, and the divine energy was evidently a little denser than the outside. Zhu Yao nodded at Emo Xianxian, and then headed towards the right side of the small building, towards the room with a MB written on it. "Fellow deity Zhu." Just as she was about to enter, Emo Xianxian suddenly called out. Zhu Yao turned around. Emo Xianxian lowered her head, her eyes flickered, as though she was hesitating about something. A moment later, she bowed towards her and said, "Back then at the outskirts of the divine city. Thank you for saving me, fellow deity Zhu." She finally said it. And here she was thinking that she was going to continue pretending not to know her. Chapter 156. It can't be said to be saving. Fairy's cultivation level isn't ordinary. I was the one who made an unnecessary move. Zhu Yao honestly said. Emo Xianxian's expression stiffened, and instantly, she felt a little awkward. Back then, I indeed had urgent matters to attend to, so I hope that Fairy can forgive me. Her words were extremely sincere, and she even had the intention to seek peace. Zhu Yao could not continue to act pretentious either. After all, she was the one who asked for it back then, and she did not force her to save him. Forget it, I didn't take it to heart in the first place. At most, he was just a little unhappy that his space was bound. Thank you, fellow deity. Emo Xianxian heaved a sigh of relief, and hesitantly asked, I wonder what is the relationship between fellow deity and that arrow spirit? Zhu Yao turned to glance at her. You mean Gooden? Yes, no matter how she thought about it, she couldn't understand how the two of them got together. Don't worry, Godan doesn't want to capture you and make you his cauldron. He really likes you. As the boss, he still had to show his presence to his subordinates. He has turned over a new leaf. He won't do anything bad anymore. A hint of a strange expression flashed past Emo Xianxian's face. She still did not have a good impression of Gooden, however. She tactfully did not bring up this topic again. Since that's the case in tomorrow's entrance selection, I hope that fellow Taoist will take care of me. I will do my best as well, and will not burden fellow Taoist. Entrance selection? Zhu Yao was startled. What entrance selection? Fellow Taoist, did you not notice it earlier in the Great Hall? Emo Xianxian patiently explained. In tomorrow's tournament, 2 people will form a group, and the numbers in the jade tablets will be the standard. That's why we're in the same group. Zhu Yao recalled the A2 on the board. So it wasn't just for the allocation of housing, it was also for the group competition? No wonder she took the initiative to greet him and didn't fuss over Gooden's matter. It was because of this. They were indeed in the same group. Having a grudge between the two was detrimental to the competition. She frowned. This kind of purposeful and calculative apology made her feel very uncomfortable. Immediately, they were not in the mood to chat. After a few perfunctory words, they went back to their rooms. He wasn't too worried about the competition tomorrow. It could be considered as an entrance exam. Previously, she had swept her gaze across the hall, and those disciples were only at the Earth Immortal stage. She was the only Xian immortal, so no matter what, she had the upper hand. What she really cared about was, Master, have you found that person's aura? No. As expected, Zhu Yao was a little disappointed. Master, when will you come out? Yu Yan was silent for a moment. Void formations are a little complicated. It will take some time. Can't I ask Gooden to bring you out? Gooden was the owner of the space, so he should be able to bring out the things inside. Though he's the lord of this place, I'm not something that belongs to space. Yu Yan explained. If I want to follow him out of this space, I'll have to sign another blood contract with him. Forget it then. Master could be the beast that he summoned. Becoming someone else's was simply unbearable. There's no need to be impatient, Yu Yan said. Even if that woman isn't the one who barged into the Lightning Divine Hall, she's closely related to that person. Let's just wait and see. In half a year at most, I will be able to complete the formation. During this period, you must not act impulsively. Yes. Master said to wait and see. However, Zhu Yao never expected that this change would come so quickly. On the second day in the arena, she and Mo Xianxian's opponent. They were two deities, with the cultivation of earth deities. In the beginning, she did not put them in her heart. However, the longer she fought, the stranger she felt. Though the two of them were not using any powerful mystic arts, their divine energy seemed to be endless, and they did not look the least bit tired. Even her attacks were easily dispelled by the other party. Mo Xianxian was already reaching her limits, and she was gradually feeling a little powerless. Zhu Yao was dealing with the two of them, and she even had to split her attention to take care of her teammates. Evidently, she was about to be at a disadvantage. At this moment, one of the opponents suddenly summoned a fire dragon, which directly attacked her. Zhu Yao turned to dodge, however, she was attacked by the other person with a sword. She faced the sword head-on, and suddenly, a powerful pressure assaulted her, causing her to almost lose her grip on her sword. This was the strength of an earth deity. Don't joke around. Suppressing someone of a higher level? Why wasn't she aware of this? However, this earth deity did not have the intention to tangle with her. In a flash, he had already appeared behind her. Zhu Yao turned her head in astonishment, only to see the two of them attacking Mo Xianxian. One of them summoned countless icicles, while the other summoned a sword formation. They attacked towards Mo Xianxian from all directions, and she was basically unable to dodge them. If this was just a sparring match, such methods were a little too much. They were clearly trying to kill her. Zhu Yao wanted to turn around and save her, but it was already too late. The other party's attacks had already been released. The icicles and spiritual swords, carrying sharp auras, rumbled towards Mo Xianxian on the ground. In an instant, a cloud of dust flew into the air. A hint of complacency flashed past the faces of the two earth deities, but a moment later, their expressions turned solemn. Lowering her head to look at Mo Xianxian's position, she saw her surroundings were flashing with a hint of a formation's afterglow. Yet, there was not the slightest injury on her body. Her surroundings were filled with falling icicles and dissipating afterglow of spiritual swords. Are you alright? Zhu Yao landed next to Mo Xianxian. Amen. Mo Xianxian nodded. Thank you for your formation. Zhu Yao heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she had secretly placed down a formation around the exhausted Mo Xianxian, otherwise she would have definitely died from this attack. Currently, the air was still filled with killing intent that had yet to fade. The two of them really wanted to kill Mo Xianxian. However, they hid it very well, and other than them, none of the spectators were able to see through it. Just who did you offend? Zhu Yao glanced at Mo Xianxian. Why were there people chasing after her everywhere? Mo Xianxian naturally sensed that killing intent as well, as she clenched her fists. I don't recognize these two people. Not recognizing them proved that there was still a big boss behind the two of them. If the two earth deities were already this powerful, then the people behind them would only be stronger. They aren't earth deities. Yu Yan's words suddenly resounded in her mind. They're gold deities. The hell? Why was she unable to defeat them? So even their cultivations were faked as well. and they intentionally pretended to be earth deities to kill people. They could be considered to have put in a lot of effort. What should I do? Xianxian was a little flustered. Dodging one attack did not mean that she would be lucky enough to dodge the next one as well. Yet, an isolation formation had been placed on this place in the first place, and before the victor was decided, she basically couldn't leave. The two people's eyes grew even colder, as they lightly laughed. Initially, we only planned to deal with one of them, but now it seems. He did not finish, and simply looked towards Zhu Yao at the side. His eyes sank, evidently, killing intent was born towards her. Zhu Yao instantly felt like cursing out. Just who did she offend? Xianxian, you play as a tank, right? You can pull aggro everywhere you go? The main point was, she was actually playing OT now. Just who are you people? Xianxian asked loudly. The two people exchanged glances, and their eyes grew even colder. Faintly, they even let out a cold laugh. There's no need for you to know. In any case, you two are destined to be unable to leave this place normally today. They were destined to die here. Who said we can't leave? Zhu Yao rolled her eyes at the two of them. Indeed, I can't defeat you two, but I can still. Zhu Yao kept the divine sword in her hands, raised her hands up high, and loudly shouted, I admit defeat. When these words fell, not only the two opponents, even Xianxian at the side was dumbfounded. No one could have expected that she would actually admit defeat so shamelessly. The main point was, the isolation formation at the side had been dispelled as well. Are you stupid? I clearly know that you two are going to deal with me. If I don't admit defeat, I'm going to stay here, and let you two beat me up? Her words made so much sense, they were actually speechless. The two of them instantly gritted their teeth. Initially, it was a great opportunity, and they had thought that they could get rid of Xianxian openly. Who would have thought that it would actually be resolved with a single sentence? And those two people who were originally definitely unable to leave this place normally, were actually very normally, and they were even strutting out of this place. The two of them. Fellow deity Zhu. Xianxian hurriedly caught up to Zhu Yao's footsteps, and said seriously, Thank you. Her face was filled with gratitude. This time, it wasn't a little scheming like before, but sincere. This match was clearly targeted at her. Though because of her admitting defeat, the two of them lost the match together, it saved her life. I'm just saving myself. Zhu Yao waved her hands without a mind. This lady sure was unlucky. Why was it that there were people chasing after her no matter where she went? Xianxian smiled. Yet, her face was dyed with a little worry. However, from today onwards, I'm afraid this Advent Cloud Hall. The two of them definitely wouldn't let her go just like that. Advent Cloud Hall wasn't a place to stay for long either. I don't think so. Zhu Yao shook her head. Since they won today, they will definitely become elite disciples of Advent Cloud Hall. Naturally, their statuses won't be ordinary, and it won't be easy for them to deal with you so brazenly. Not only that, her master had told her that the two of them were gold deities. Though there were many gold deities in the heaven realm, not a single one of them had not joined various powers. The people on the stage had low cultivation levels, so they might not be able to see through it, but there would definitely be people who would see through it. When that time comes, there would naturally be various schemers and higher-ups who would suspect the two of them. Hence, the two of them basically wouldn't stay in Advent Cloud Hall for long. Xianxian was still a little worried, and she felt uneasy for the next few days. However, ever since that day, she really never saw those two people in Advent Cloud Hall again. It was as though they had suddenly disappeared. Only then did Xianxian feel at ease, and began to feel even more grateful toward Zhu Yao. Though she had been cultivating in her cave residence for the past few days, she was still very worried about her situation of being constantly chased after. Yet, Zhu Yao volunteered to help her investigate the origins of those two people. It seemed like this friend was worth befriending. Great fog. Chapter 157. But while his identity could be concealed, his cultivation technique could not. Every faction in the immortal world had their own unique cultivation methods. For example, Advent Cloud Hall was proficient in sword arts, using the sword to enter the Tao. On the other hand, the two people from that day were clearly more proficient in the 5 elemental spells, especially the fire elemental spells, which were particularly powerful. Therefore, she specifically asked around to find out where the best fire elemental spells were. The answer they received was very uniform. Fluorescent Wind Sect in the north. Those two people came from Fluorescent Wind Sect. Zhu Yao's guess was right. That competition was for the sake of selecting elite disciples. The top 3 victorious disciples were all taken away. Presumably, they had already caught the attention of the higher-ups and were going to be heavily nurtured. Those who lost were basically left to fend for themselves. Mushroom and Gooden were also one of the people who had been released. It should be said that all the demons who had participated in the competition that day had been released. Most of them had not learned orthodox celestial arts, so it was very normal for them to be defeated by celestial cultivators. Mushroom and Gooden were basically defeated the moment they stepped onto the stage. He wasn't injured at all, and when he got up he was a cheerful spirit again. The cultivators who were left to roam freely were all given some cultivation incantations of immortal techniques. Every month, they could also go to the consulate's hall to receive some elixirs and immortal stones, which could be regarded as the benefits of the sect. However, the amount was obviously not much. However, it was much better than other spiritual monsters. Only later on did Zhu Yao find out that those spiritual monsters who did not cross that invisible bridge were mostly sent to the various halls to handle some of the miscellaneous matters of Advent Cloud Hall. These people had basically given up on improving their cultivation. This was a bit like the inner sect and outer sect of a sect. Those who crossed the bridge were the inner sect, and those who didn't could only be considered the outer sect. In the past few days, Zhu Yao had been obediently staying put. With her current cultivation, she could be considered as trash in Advent Cloud Hall. Master's array formation was about to be completed. Once he came out, she would be able to look for the mastermind behind the scenes. Then she would have more confidence. For the past few days, Gooden had been running over to her place. Of course, he wasn't looking for her. He was looking for his sister, Xianxian. Unfortunately, no matter how much he pestered her, she didn't even spare him a glance. She thought of her husband wholeheartedly. Sigh. Of all the things that Go Dan could do, he just had to like poaching people's women. How could they fall in love when they were of different races? There was no happiness between humans and monsters. Sure enough, in less than a quarter of an hour, Go Dan was sent flying out of the courtyard by Sister Xian, who couldn't bear it any longer. With a swoosh he disappeared. 36th time. The mushroom chanted in a gloating manner. Zhu Yao silently lit the 36th candle for Gooden in her heart. Pulling Mushroom along, he left the crime scene. Originally, he wanted to go out for a few rounds. If he was lucky, he could even pick up Go Dan. However, he didn't expect to meet an acquaintance on the way. So you guys are here. It's really a case of wearing out iron shoes in fruitless search. A green-robed woman with 2 attendants walked towards them, smiling proudly. The mushroom was startled for a moment, and then blurted out, "Little bitch, shut up." The woman stopped Mushroom's words furiously. He glared at the two of them. "You did it on purpose that day." It was actually that little bitch who was impersonating her. Zhu Yao was a little shocked. He looked her up and down and saw that there was a dark red pattern embroidered on her cuffs. "Are you an elite disciple?" Only elite disciples would have such a pattern on their clothes. He did not expect her to be one of the top 3 in the competition that day. Tao Manfeng coldly laughed, raised her head, and coldly glanced at them. "That's right. Logically speaking, you all should be calling me eldest senior martial sister." "Oh, eldest senior martial sister." The mushroom was startled for a moment, and then casually called out. Though Tao Manfeng was dumbfounded, as though she did not expect that he would actually be so straightforward. She grew even angrier in the depths of her heart. "You're a mere spiritual monster, yet you actually dare to humiliate me in public. If I don't teach you a lesson, you won't know your limits." The mushroom was confused, as he turned to look at Zhu Yao. "Rock spirit, what did I do?" The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She was angry because she did not do anything, alright? "Great, you two sure have guts. You even dare to provoke me now?" Did we? The mushroom was still looking at Zhu Yao. No. Zhu Yao replied. She did not do anything. Tao Monfeng's anger grew even stronger. You two are scolding me right in front of my face, and you're still saying it's not a provocation? What did we scold you for? The mushroom expressed his innocence. You're still denying it? Earlier, you were even scolding me, as a BC. The mushroom was even more confused. But you're a little bitch. Wasn't that her name? Rock Spirit said it. Shut up. Tao Monfeng's face had turned green from anger. You're the little bitch. All of you are little bitches. The mushroom argued. I'm clearly a little mushroom. You can call me Goo Goo. You, Zhu Yao silently turned her face away. Goo Goo, you really are my aunt. You can't really think that her surname is Little, and her name is Bitch, right? Seriously, it's clearly your own name, yet you don't allow me to call it. The mushroom once again stabbed her. Only then did Tao Manfeng understand his words. Gritting her teeth, she said, My surname is Tao, and I'm called Tao Manfeng. You better remember it. Oh. Only then did the mushroom look as though he was enlightened. Sizing her up for a moment, he curled his lips and said, So you've changed your name. You should have said so earlier. Zhu Yao could faintly hear the sound of Tao Manfeng puking out 3 liters of blood. You two. Tao Manfeng wished that she could pounce forward and tear that monster's mouth apart. Taking a deep breath, she instructed the 2 followers behind her. You two help me stand guard. With a dark expression, she looked at the 2 of them. At that moment, Zhu Yao felt as though she was being blocked by high-grade students after school. Didn't she just scolded her once? As for coming here to settle the debt, this lady was a little too petty. Zhu Yao had yet to settle the debt with her. Tao Manfeng coldly looked at them. Divine energy surged from her body, and lightning sparks could faintly be seen flashing in her hands. I have sworn that, as long as someone dares to humiliate me, I will not let a single one of them off. Was she going to fight? Zhu Yao was a little surprised. She couldn't have become muddle-headed from anger, right? Although she was currently an elite disciple, her cultivation level was still higher than hers. Tao Manfeng, however, did not have the intention to stop. Raising her left hand that was flashing with lightning sparks, numerous tiny yet extremely powerful lightning bolts were currently being emitted from her palm. Imperial lightning art? Yu Yan's voice resounded in Zhu Yao's mind, carrying a hint of doubt. Why does she know the Lightning Divine Hall's mystic arts? Weren't you the one who gave it to her? Zhu Yao really wanted to spit out a mouthful of salted soda towards her divine sense. She slightly understood why Tao Manfeng dared to make a move. The Imperial Lightning Art was a divine art of Lightning Divine Hall, and it could not be compared to normal divine arts. Even if she were to challenge someone of a higher realm, she might not necessarily lose. Me? Yu Yan was startled, and only after a while did he regain his senses. Oh, it's her. So you basically did not recognize her earlier, huh? Just how face-blind are you? Master, what should we do? Although she had learned lightning-type mystic arts as well, she had yet to learn the Imperial Lightning Art. No worries. Yu Yan, however, was exceptionally calm. Just stand there and not move. Ah, not moving? Wait to be struck? Seeing as Tao Manfeng's mystic art had already taken form, the lightning in her palm grew thicker and thicker. Suddenly, it turned into a long lightning bolt, soaring into the sky, and was about to strike in her and the mushroom's direction. Die. Just as Zhu Yao was about to erect a defensive barrier, suddenly, a water dragon descended from the sky, pouncing straight towards the lightning. With a whoosh, the lightning was engulfed by the water dragon, while the water chased after the point where the lightning was emitted, instantly drenching Tao Manfeng's entire body. Although the water dragon was able to block the lightning bolt, it was unable to completely restrain it. Hence, the lightning bolt still existed. And all of this involved a physical phenomenon. Water conducts electricity. Hence, wherever the water splashed past, lightning would flash. Along with Tao Manfeng, who was drenched. Earlier, she was dressed in a green robe and was insufferably arrogant. Elite disciple, student Tao Manfeng, was electrocuted all over and instantly transformed into a real person? The declaration she had yet to finish roaring earlier still lingered in the air. Die, die, die. The moment the electric current passed by, her entire body twitched, and with every twitch, the tone of the word die would change. Hence, the scene was filled with her various variations. Die, 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 die Zhu Yao. Mushroom. Lackeys. Only when her entire body was charred black, and she fell head first into a puddle of water, did her voice disappear. A few wisps of light smoke slowly rose. Ah! She really could win as long as she stood there without moving. Student Tao Manfeng, I really don't hate you in the slightest anymore. Eldest senior martial sister. The two lackeys were dumbfounded, as they anxiously looked at Tao Manfeng, who had already fainted from the electric current. However, no one dared to go over to support her, because sparks of electricity were still flashing in the water. Just when they were at a loss, a loud and resounding voice that was filled with an imposing aura resounded in the air. And it was even a little familiar. Who is using the lightning arts here? A white figure flew over from afar. The person who came looked to be in his 20s, and his face was filled with righteousness. His brows were tightly knitted as he looked at the surface of the water, which was flashing with lightning sparks. Zhu Yao instantly wanted to cover her face and head back. It was actually Miao Lin. How could she have forgotten about him? Die, die, die. This time, she was definitely going to be recognized. We greet eldest senior martial brother. The two lackeys bowed towards Miao Lin. Amen. Miao Lin nodded with a stern look. He swept his eyes across the few people present, including Zhu Yao, who was desperately lowering her head. What happened? The two lackeys exchanged glances, and despair flashed past their eyes. Eldest senior martial brother. It's the new little senior martial sister. She has some grudges with these two disciples, and in a moment of confusion, she made her move. She knows the lightning arts. Miao Lin looked a little strangely at the person who was still lying lifelessly in the water. Yes, little senior martial sister is indeed the only one among this batch of disciples who knows the lightning arts. And that disciple said with a look of worship. Senior martial sister said that she knows the lightning arts as well. Chapter 158. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. Not seeing it, but being struck by it, right? Of course. That disciple immediately flattered. Among our group of disciples, only eldest senior martial brother has personally gone to Lightning Divine Hall. Amen. Miao Lin nodded complacently, and said with a serious look. I really hope to witness the mystic arts of Lightning Divine Hall once more. Zhu Yao. Are you a masochist? I have long said that lightning-type mystic arts are not allowed in Advent Cloud Hall. Seeing that this junior martial sister has just entered the sect not too long ago, and has already been punished, I will let bygones be bygones. Disperse. Yes, eldest senior martial brother. The two lackeys thanked him. However, they looked at Tao Manfeng, who was in the water, and looked a little troubled. Miao Lin frowned, and cast an art. The water on the ground once again condensed into a water dragon, and flew up. Only then did the two lackeys carry Tao Manfeng away. Zhu Yao pulled the mushroom, and planned to escape as well. However, Miao Lin suddenly shouted out. Stop right there. In a flash, he had already blocked in front of Zhu Yao. Junior martial sister, have we met somewhere before? It's over. Miao Lin had already reached out his hand. Why do you keep lowering your head? In a moment of anxiousness, Zhu Yao retracted all the divine energy in her body. Plop. She returned to her original form. A snow-white jade instantly landed in Miao Lin's palm that he had yet to retract in time. Why did you return to your original form? Eldest senior martial brother. I'm your brainless fan. Brainless fan? What's that? Miao Lin was startled. Brainless fan. It means that I really like and admire you a lot. Zhu Yao immediately activated her trickery mode. This disciple has long heard of eldest senior martial brother's fame. Now that I have finally seen you in person, I was a little excited, which is why I returned to my original form. Miao Lin said with a smile. As expected, he lowered his guard and flipped the jade in his palm. You sure have good eyes. Cultivate well, and in the future, You will have my achievements as well. Zhu Yao tried her best to express her excitement. Thank you, eldest senior martial brother. I will definitely work hard. Amen. Miao Lin passed the jade to the mushroom at the side and instructed. You guys don't have to be afraid. My Advent Cloud Hall isn't a place without rules. If junior sister Tao comes to find trouble with you again, feel free to come and find me. Really? Eldest senior brother? Of course. Miao Lin nodded. This was probably the first time he had a fan. Even the gaze with which he looked at Mushroom had become much gentler. What is it? Feel free to look for me. Alright, eldest senior brother. Thank you, senior brother. Alright, you can leave now. Zhu Yao did not expect that she would be able to sneak past them so easily, and immediately urged the mushroom to bring her back. Looks like I can't continue staying in the Advent Cloud Hall. One day he would be recognized. Furthermore, she had already found a clue, so she had to find an opportunity to rush over to Fluorescent Wind Sect as soon as possible. The two of them hurriedly walked, and when they returned to the house and closed the door, only then did Zhu Yao heave a sigh of relief. She habitually adjusted her immortal energy, wanting to transform back into a human. However, she discovered that her body was completely empty. Her dantian sent a stinging pain, and she could not transform back. The hell, what's going on? Zhu Yao's entire body felt unwell. Master, I can't return to my human form. No need to panic. Earlier, when you forcefully transformed back into your original form, you retracted your immortal energy too quickly and damaged your dantian. Yu Yin slowly said. It's just that you can't circulate it for now. You will recover in a few days. You gave me a fright. Good. So it was just that she retracted her immortal energy too quickly and felt a stinging pain. Rock Spirit, who are you talking to? Mushroom curiously lowered his head. She forgot that Mushroom was still here. The familiar face suddenly approached, and Zhu Yao simply felt the depths of her heart trembling, as a strange feeling rose. As expected, she was still unable to get used to Mushroom's human form, especially his face that resembled a little wimp's. Nothing much, I was just talking to myself. Zhu Yao chuckled. Oh. Mushroom glanced at her and frowned. As though he wanted to ask something, he opened his mouth and then changed the topic. Can't you return to your human form? Amen. She did not hide this from him. I changed too quickly earlier, and I will only be able to recover after a few days. Oh, then have a good rest. I'll be heading back first. Mushroom instructed her a few words, and then returned to his own cave residence. However, when he left, his expression was a little solemn, and he turned to look at her a few times. Did rock spirits have a master? Master. An indescribable emotion suddenly surfaced in the depths of his heart that was initially pure white. Why did he feel that these two words sounded a little familiar? Zhu Yao planned to head to Fluorescent Wind Sect after she returned to her human form. Currently, as a jade pendant that did not have the ability to move, the only thing she could do was sleep. However, she never expected that someone would actually attack her at night. That person suddenly appeared in her house. There were no ripples of divine arts, and the doors and windows were tightly shut as well. In just a blink of an eye, a human figure appeared in the house. His figure was slightly tall, and she could only faintly tell that he was a male practitioner. The moonlight in the house was bright, yet she just could not see that person's face clearly. Just as Zhu Yao was about to speak, she was interrupted by Yu Yan. Yu Yao. Her master's slightly anxious voice resounded in her mind. This person is the one who barged into Lightning Divine Hall. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment, and was instantly overjoyed. She hurriedly sent a voice transmission. Then, after capturing him, Master, will you be able to come out? Zhu Yao began to imagine the 18 forbidden binding arts. Yu Yao. Yu Yan's voice sank. This person's cultivation is above mine. Then what the hell was she supposed to do? Fortunately, she did not make a sound earlier, otherwise, the one who would be tied up would be her. What should I do? Don't make any noise. Quietly observe the situation. Zhu Yao retracted her inner vision, and quietly continued to put on the jade pendant. The room was strangely quiet. Even the cries of the insects outside the window had stopped. She did not know what that person was here for either. Ever since he appeared, he had been standing in the house without moving at all. Zhu Yao was almost about to believe that the reason he came in was because he liked the floor beneath his feet. Finally, he moved for a moment. Turning his head, he swept his gaze around the house, as though he was searching for something. A moment later, she felt a divine sense sweeping towards her. At this moment, Zhu Yao was glad that she did not have a single strand of divine energy left in her body, and had reverted to her original form. Without any divine energy ripples, even if a divine sense were to sweep past her, she would just be a regular piece of jade. That person would definitely not be able to discover her. Eh? Why did he come here? That person retracted his divine sense and walked straight towards the table. As though he was certain, his footsteps did not even have the slightest bit of hesitation. Did he have to be this awesome? Zhu Yao's heart instantly tensed up. What happened to not being able to see him? An ice-cold gaze locked onto her body. Clearly, he did not do anything. Yet, Zhu Yao felt a chill seeping out from the depths of her heart, as though she was about to suffocate under his gaze. Just when Zhu Yao could not help but speak out, he suddenly shifted his gaze away. His figure flashed, and just like how he appeared, he disappeared from the house. What was going on? Zhu Yao was completely unable to understand, however. That terrifying feeling earlier was stuck in her heart for a long while. Just who was that person? A moment later, the door was suddenly pushed open with a crack, and a head sneakily peeked in. Little bitch. It was actually that Tao Manfeng who found trouble with her during the day. Was it written on the almanac today that they were going to travel at night? And it was even a night raid. Tao Manfeng looked left and right for a moment, before carefully pushing the door open and entering. First, she lightly walked to the front of the bed to take a look. As though she had confirmed that there was no one in the house, she frowned and looked around. Just as she was about to leave, she saw Zhu Yao on the table, and her eyes instantly shone. Zhu Yao suddenly had a bad premonition. Divine Jade. Tao Manfeng excitedly picked up the jade pendant on the table and inspected it from top to bottom. As I thought, it's this piece. What was this little bitch thinking of doing? She couldn't be thinking of impersonating her, right? Tao Manfeng, however, did not speak any further. She simply picked up Zhu Yao and left the house with an excited look. Riding on her flying sword, she flew straight out of Advent Cloud Hall. Where was she bringing her to? She seemed to be especially excited. As she flew, she even took out the jade pendant to take a look, and her other hand was constantly caressing the jade's surface. Her caresses caused goosebumps to fall all over Zhu Yao's body. After she regained her human form, she definitely had to take a bath, the kind that would rub hard. She flew for an entire night, and only when she arrived at a small market did she finally land. However, she then turned around and entered an extremely concealed courtyard. Only after setting down several layers of concealment and isolation formations outside, did she finally enter the house. After looking at her surroundings for a moment, she cautiously took out the jade pendant and began to carefully inspect it. In order to prevent herself from being exposed, Zhu Yao did not make a sound during the entire journey. Evidently, Tao Manfeng had recognized her original form. However, looking at how she was so unconcerned, evidently, she did not know that she had already cultivated into a human form. Tao Manfeng looked at her from top to bottom for a long while. And the more she looked, the deeper her frown became. She muttered to herself, "Could it be that this jade is only used to prove that I'm a disciple of Lightning Divine Hall?" Zhu Yao rolled her eyes in the depths of her heart. It seemed like she really could not forget about Lightning Divine Hall. Items of Lightning Divine Hall are definitely not this simple. Tao Manfeng took a deep breath and continued to inspect it for a long while. First, she merely used her eyes to look at it, and then, she used her divine sense to scan it again. She even sent some divine energy into the jade. This is impossible. Looking at the completely unresponsive divine jade, her expression turned a little ugly. She then tried a few other methods, such as using water to bubble it, burning it with fire, burying it with mud, and so on. Zhu Yao even wanted to praise her for her perseverance, and silently rejoiced that she was merely a rock. Otherwise, if this continued, even if she did not die, a layer of her skin would be peeled off. Tao Manfeng continuously tossed and turned for an entire night, while Zhu Yao quietly pretended to be dead. Finally, she gritted her teeth, condensed a spiritual sword, and then slashed it towards her own finger. In an instant, a large amount of fresh blood droplets flowed out, flowing along her finger. She raised her bleeding finger and pressed it towards Zhu Yao. All right, she finally found the right method. However, it was already too late. She had long been sprayed with blood by someone, so no matter how much blood she dripped, ding, dimensional binding successful. The hell? Just how much love did this dimensional space have? How could it be bound just by dripping a drop of blood on anyone, hey? It seemed like it only recognized blood, and not the person. Zhu Yao instantly felt a little frenzied. Master, what should we do? She was not Gooden, and was not so easily fooled. We definitely cannot let her enter the dimensional space. Chapter 159. As expected, Tao Manfeng was still seated in front of the table. However, the divine energy surrounding her body had suddenly thickened by quite a bit, and it was even showing signs of growing thicker. Even the divine energy in the house which was initially present was beginning to stir. Tao Manfeng sensed the abnormality as well, and her expression turned joyful. Picking up Zhu Yao, she sat cross-legged on the bed, and began to absorb divine energy. Yu Yao, there's an abnormal movement with the divine energy in the dimensional space. Yu Yan's voice rang in her ears. Zhu Yao was startled. Only then did she realize that the divine energy that suddenly appeared in the house was actually flowing out from the dimensional space. She could draw out the immortal qi from the space? Tao Manfeng meditated for an entire day, and only then did she completely absorb all of the divine energy. Only then did her cultivation stop from the initial stage earthly deity to the intermediate stage earthly deity, and the abnormal movements of the divine energy in the space stopped as well. It really is a treasure. Tao Manfeng picked up that piece of immortal jade, and her face was filled with wild joy. So it turned out that this piece of immortal jade could even raise one's cultivation. She checked it again and again. Suddenly, she released her divine sense towards the jade stone. Zhu Yao's heart skipped a beat. This feeling was exactly the same as when Gooden entered the dimensional space back then. Just as she was thinking of what to do, that divine sense was suddenly bounced back. Her entire piece of jade began to emit a white light, and something was being transmitted through her divine sense. With a few pu sounds, like beans being poured, some immortal herbs fell from the sky and instantly piled up on the ground. Some of them even had some fresh soil on them. These. Tao Manfeng fiercely stood up, picked up the immortal herbs on the ground, and her eyes widened. Immortal herb, imperial wind branch, meridian severing lotus. She read out the names one by one, and the more she read, the more dazed her expression became. He seemed to be in slight disbelief. How is this possible? These were all supreme-grade immortal herbs that had been extinct for a long time. It was extremely difficult to find even one in the immortal realm. Master? What was going on? A portion of the space's immortal grass has been sent out. Spread the news? Just as Zhu Yao was in a daze, the table in the house suddenly shook a few times, and instantly disappeared. Even Tao Manfeng was given a fright. And in Zhu Yao's dimensional space, a normal-looking wooden table suddenly appeared. This is... Why can things enter and leave the space automatically? For a moment, Zhu Yao was a little confused. Yu Yan frowned, and after a while he said, "The items in this space are limited. We must take back a portion of it. That's why those immortal herbs." Did you exchange it for a wooden table? Isn't this too much of a loss? It's because this table is closest to your seat, so it was sent here. Zhu Yao pondered for a moment. Indeed, when Tao Manfeng was inspecting those divine herbs earlier, the closest thing to him was this wooden table. That is to say, she couldn't go into space. But you can take things from the space? Not necessarily. Yu Yan looked at the position of the wooden table. She used a blood contract to bind the space, but after all, it's not the blood of her heart. Therefore, he could not be considered as the owner of this space. What disappeared were the immortal herbs at the edge of the space. She must have only been able to use a portion of the items. Zhu Yao instantly heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, she was unable to enter. Tao Manfeng seemed to have noticed this point as well, as she consecutively tried a few more times. First, she used her divine sense to probe into the jade pendant, and then, a few stalks of divine herbs would appear out of thin air in the house. However, correspondingly, a few things would disappear from the house as well, but they were all the things that were closest to the jade pendant. Master, I have an idea. You might be able to come out in advance. After figuring out the exact method, Tao Manfeng left that small courtyard and arrived at the market. She was smart enough not to take out those few stalks of divine herbs, and simply rented a cave residence to begin her closed-door training. She repeatedly dripped her blood onto the jade pendant, and then guided out dense divine energy. Zhu Yao's dantian had more or less recovered as well. However, whenever she wanted to return to her human form, the divine energy that she guided out would all be absorbed by Tao Manfeng. Not even the slightest bit of it was left in the jade pendant, and she was basically unable to take on a human form. Zhu Yao, however, was not in a rush. She was waiting for an opportunity. Tao Manfeng had been in closed-door training for more than 3 months, and her cultivation had instantly reached the Earth Deity Paragon level. Her next step would be to break through to the Profound Deity level. The advancement of a large realm, other than absorbing divine energy, required a certain amount of luck as well. She stopped and bought a large pile of miscellaneous items. Then she took out a pellet furnace. She wanted to refine the Profound Energy Pellet, which was a divine pellet that could directly raise one's cultivation from the Earth Deity level to the late stages of the Profound Deity level. However, it required a large amount of divine herbs and spirits. These herbs were extremely hard to find in the divine realm, but right now, it was not a problem. Tao Manfeng took out the jade pendant. This time, she no longer inserted her divine sense into it in a probing manner. Instead, she directly released half of her divine sense into the jade pendant. Even Zhu Yao felt a faint pain from her divine sense being struck by her. In an instant, the cave residence was as bright as day, and the jade pendant emitted out an eye-piercing white light that had never been seen before. Tao Manfeng excitedly waited for the various divine herbs that descended from the sky. She could seemingly see herself stepping into the Profound Deity Paragon level, and even the Gold Deity, Heavy Deity, High Deity levels in the future. She could even enter the Lightning Divine Tower and ascend to become a god. As long as she had this jade pendant, she could definitely once again stand above everyone else and reach the pinnacle of cultivation. She seemed to be unable to suppress her own excitement. No matter how eye-piercing the light was, she stared at it unblinkingly, until a figure appeared within the white light. She could not help but take a step forward, and just as she was about to reach out her hand, suddenly, all of the light instantly retracted. There were no divine herbs or divine medicines in front of her. There was only a man dressed in a snow-white robe, who was looking at her with a pair of ice-cold eyes. Tao Manfeng was startled, and she almost blurted out, "You're." However, suddenly, her eyes flashed, and that figure once again disappeared. In front of her was a ground filled with divine herbs that had long been extinct in the divine realm for many years. As expected, was her eyes just playing tricks on her earlier? Hurry and seal off your divine sense. Yu Yan gathered his divine energy and tapped on the jade on the ground, while forcefully turning Zhu Yao back into her human form. He instructed with a sunken voice. Zhu Yao did as she was told. A second before she sealed off her divine sense, she faintly saw Tao Manfeng sitting on the ground filled with divine herbs with a pleasantly surprised look. "Master, you're out?" Zhu Yao pounced forward and tightly hugged the person in front of her. An ice-cold and familiar aura instantly filled her chest, and she suddenly felt that she could continue to be willful. "Master, father." "Amen," Yu Yan lightly responded. Reaching out his hand, he stroked his disciple's head. It had been a long time since he felt this touch. As expected, his stupid disciple would only feel at ease if she was by his side. Hence, he forcefully rubbed it a few times, and his fingertips could not help but slide past her warm lips and teeth. He unconsciously lowered his head, and just as he was about to press his lips onto Mistress, a round mystic beast suddenly squeezed out, and its buttocks pressed onto his head. Its two front paws pounced forward and hung onto his disciple's neck. With a sweep of its wings, it forcefully pushed a certain master away. Mistress, I finally met you. I've missed you so much. Oh, this beastie wants to give birth to little beasties for you. Sesame. Zhu Yao was startled for a moment as she tugged on its little wings. Why did you come out as well? I shrunk and hit on a bad person's body. Sesame swayed its large tail and hung onto Zhu Yao's body like a puppet. Mistress, you don't even care about me. It's been so long since we last met. Aren't you going to hug this beastie? Zhu Yao's expression darkened. She wanted to pull Sesame down from her body, but to no avail. Why was Sesame's words getting more and more annoying? Back then, when she was a dragon, it was fine with her bloodline suppressing her. But now, she was merely a piece of jade. There was no need to flatter her like this, right? Mistress, I've missed you this much. Look, my entire beastie has become skinnier. Sesame, if you still don't come down, do you believe that I will flatten you even thinner? Mistress, you're so heartless, so unreasonable. Scram. Mistress. Sesame still wanted to say something, however, it suddenly felt its body becoming light. Its body was being lifted up by a huge force, and then with a bang sound, it was thrown out of the door. Yu Yan swung his hand, and then casually placed a restriction on the door. As expected, he shouldn't have agreed to his disciple raising a pet back then. He wondered if it was still too late to throw it away now. Master, wasn't he throwing it a little too much? Sesame's figure could not even be seen anymore. Yu Yan glanced at his disciple, and his gaze stopped at the two beast claw marks on her collar. His brows furrowed, and the cold aura around his body once again began to spread. Reaching out his hand, he cast a dirt removal art, and in an instant, the two claw marks disappeared without a trace. However, his eyes were still staring at the same spot, and did not leave for a long time, as though there was something dirty there that could not be washed away. Master. Zhu Yao's heart trembled. If you stare at me so intently, I won't be able to endure it. Zhu Yao. Take off your clothes then. Alright. Do you want a flawless white wall, or a faintly discernible white wall? Just say it, there's no need to be polite. Ever since she found out that Tao Monfeng's blood could be used to exchange for items at the edge of the dimensional space, Zhu Yao felt that this method could allow her master to come out. Hence, she had been waiting for the opportunity for her to exchange a large amount of items from the dimensional space. As expected, in order to break through into the profound deity level, she had decided to begin refining the profound energy pellet, and refining the profound energy pellet required a large amount of divine herbs. Hence, in the beginning, she had her master move the divine herbs to the edge of the dimensional space. Tao Manfeng was unable to see the situation in the dimensional space, and when she occasionally exchanged items, the items she exchanged were all divine herbs. Naturally, she thought that there was a large amount of divine herbs inside. Hence, in order to refine the pellet, she prepared many items, and planned to exchange them all at once. Her master just happened to take this opportunity to come out, and he even brought Sesame along. And Tao Manfeng being locked in the dimensional space was something she did not expect. Initially, she had thought that the items that entered would be the miscellaneous items she had prepared. Who would have thought that the dimensional space would directly suck her in? This unlucky child. And looking at her, she did not seem to know that she was trapped inside. The reason why her master had her seal off her divine sense was most probably because he was afraid that she would discover it. However, there was one thing she did not understand. Did Tao Manfeng know that she was this piece of jade? And why did she enter her own room that day? She didn't know your true form. She merely saw through that mushroom's true form. Yu Yan stroked her head, and explained with a sunken voice. You're saying she came to look for the mushroom? Amen. Yu Yan nodded. She must have suspected him, which was why she was testing him in every possible way. That day, when she stopped you two, it was most probably just to see that mushroom's true form. That lightning bolt in her hand that day Although it looked frightening, it was merely an appraisal art to investigate one's true form. And it was aimed at that mushroom spirit. Was that why her master said that it was fine to just stand and not move? Chapter 160. Let's go. Yu Yan released the restrictions on the cave residents, summoned his flying sword, and pulled Zhu Yao to his side. Are we returning to Advent Cloud Hall? Zhu Yao casually asked. Yu Yan turned to look at her. Back to Lightning Divine Hall. Ah, but Gooden is still in Advent Cloud Hall. If I'm too far away from him, I'll turn back. Zhu Yao realized that ever since her master helped her take her form, she had been maintaining her human form. What's going on? Yu Yan stroked her head. That female deity. You're talking about Tao Manfeng. Zhu Yao widened her eyes. She suddenly recalled that she was bound to her as well, and she was currently in the dimensional space. In that case, I don't have to be bound to Gooden in the future? Amen. There's even such a benefit. As expected, that little bitch was an unlucky child. Is it all right to leave Gooden and Mushroom in Advent Cloud Hall? Zhu Yao was a little worried. That person who barged into Lightning Divine Hall might still be in Advent Cloud Hall, if his target is us. Yu Yan frowned. Those two are spiritual monsters in the first place. It's better for them to cultivate in Advent Cloud Hall. But Mushroom Yu Yao. Yu Yan interrupted her words and solemnly said. He's not Wang Shuji. Zhu Yao sent a paper crane to Mushroom, telling him that she would return to the forest first, and then follow her master back to Lightning Divine Hall. This market wasn't very far from Lightning Divine Hall. With her master's flying speed, he would be able to return in at most an hour. However, before they could leave, an unforeseen event occurred. Just as they flew up on their flying swords, suddenly the entire market shook. Deity practitioners flew out one after another, and in an instant, cracks began to appear on the ground. They were as wide as a narrow valley, and their bottomless depths could not be seen. Not even a moment later, the entire market was swallowed by that narrow valley. It was as though a hole had been sliced open on the ground. Master, this is... Even they could feel the tremors in the air. Yu Yan held onto Zhu Yao, and immediately pulled her in front of him. Follow me. The tremors came very strangely. Even he did not sense it beforehand. Who was the one who created these cracks and narrow valleys? More and more immortals appeared in the sky. Most of the people in the market were immortal cultivators who were cultivating in seclusion. The sudden shaking forced them to come out. There were even some who were injured by the backlash of the immortal chi. What happened? Where did this narrow valley come from? An attack from a Yao immortal? More and more people raised their questions. The air was in chaos. Suddenly, a figure flew out of the ravine that was still cracking. He seemed to be heavily injured. He couldn't even ride his sword steadily. It's Advent Cloud Hall's disciple. Someone recognized him, and hurriedly went up to receive him, bringing that person over. He was covered in blood, and one of his arms was missing. From the looks of it, his primordial spirit was also heavily injured. The people here were at least earthly immortals. Even though the cracks in the ground were frightening, they could not hurt these immortals. Most of them were injured by the backlash of their own immortal chi. But none of them were as heavily injured as this one. What happened? Everyone gathered around him. Clearly, he had encountered something. Heaven Gate. Heaven Gate. That person could no longer even speak clearly, as he said with a shocked expression. The lightning spiritual realm's gate collapsed. The moment these words came out, everyone sucked in a cold breath. The Heaven Gate was a path that people from the lower realm had to pass to ascend to the higher realm. If the Heaven Gate was destroyed, did that mean that the people of that world could no longer ascend? How is that possible? Although the Heaven Gate was called a gate, it was not a physical object. What everyone could see was merely a ray of guidance. That ray of light did not extinguish for a long time, and it connected to a world. Only people who had gone through the Ascension Lightning Tribulation would appear in that ray of light. It's true, that injured disciple said. The ray of guidance from the lightning spiritual realm suddenly disappeared. The crowd turned silent, and their expressions varied. They faintly felt as though something big was about to happen. Master, what kind of place is the lightning spiritual realm? Zhu Yao turned around. Yu Yan's expression was heavier than ever before. When he heard her words, he turned to look at her, and said, "The cultivation world is the lightning spiritual realm." What? Zhu Yao fiercely widened her eyes. You're saying that what was destroyed earlier was the deity ascension path from the world we came from? Yu Yan nodded. As though he was about to say something, his expression suddenly turned cold. Carrying Zhu Yao, he flew on his sword and left the sky above the narrow valley they were standing on earlier. White light suddenly emitted out from within the gigantic narrow valley, and it charged straight towards the sky. The moment the light appeared, a heavy pressure came rushing towards them, and it instantly scattered towards every corner of the divine realm. Some of the people who had stopped in the sky earlier did not manage to fly away in time, and were engulfed by the white light. Zhu Yao carefully sensed it, and she could not believe her own eyes. Master, it's spiritual pressure. Those lights were actually spiritual energy, the spiritual energy of the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. No, there were even lightning spirits, wind spirits, and other mutated spiritual energy mixed within. What was going on? This was clearly the divine realm, and there should only be divine energy here. Why was there spiritual energy here, and why was it so dense? The white light came quickly, and disappeared quickly as well. In less than 15 minutes, it grew fainter and finally disappeared. And the people who did not manage to retreat in time in the sky earlier, once again revealed themselves. I've broken through. Suddenly, someone shouted out in shock, and it immediately received the response of quite a few people. I've broken through as well. That white light allowed me to instantly rise by 2 levels. Me too. Me too. Just what was that white light earlier? That's right, it can actually directly raise one's cultivation. Just where did it come from? Everyone exchanged glances, as they did not dare to believe their own eyes. Every single person who was enveloped by that white light actually had their cultivation raised. Did no one realize that it was spiritual energy? Master. Yu Yan, however, shook his head at her. Only then did Zhu Yao realize that this matter was not suitable to be spoken of. The reason why she could tell that it was spiritual energy was because she had an almost perverted affinity with spiritual energy. And for those who ascended to the higher realm, their spirit veins had long been washed away by the lightning tribulation. Naturally, no one could sense that it was spiritual energy. If she were to let everyone know that spiritual energy still had an effect on one's cultivation, and to such a great extent at that, most likely, they would form a group and descend to the lower realm. Mistress. Sesame suddenly crawled out from the spiritual beast pouch, and looked at the narrow valley which was emitting white light earlier with a confused look. That white light earlier had your aura. What did he mean? That white light earlier seemed to have you. How is that possible? Zhu Yao was dumbfounded. She clearly did not do anything. How could it possibly emit out such a white light? It's true. Sesame's ears drooped, and it grew even more confused. I really felt it. Let's return first. Yu Yan's thick brows tightened. He immediately flew in the direction of the lightning divine hall on his sword. He flew at an extremely fast speed. Even the surrounding sceneries were streaks of afterimages. The hand which he was holding onto Zhu Yao tightened as well, and his expression grew heavier as well. Master? Zhu Yao could not help but feel a little anxious. She faintly sensed that he must have discovered something. After pondering for a moment, her heart sank. Did that person discover us? What could make his master so nervous? Aside from the person who barged into the lightning divine hall, there couldn't be anyone else. Yu Yan did not reply, and simply slowly pressed Zhu Yao against his chest, protecting her in front of him. Sticking close to her ears, he softly muttered, "Your master is here." Zhu Yao could only tightly grab onto his clothes. Her master had said that person's cultivation was above his, and if they were to fight, he did not have the confidence to win. Suddenly, she felt a little regretful that she did not work hard in her cultivation. Now she had instead become a burden. Master, why don't we? In any case, she wouldn't die. Nonsense. Knowing what she wanted to say, Yu Yan's voice instantly turned cold and faintly carried suppressed anger. Habitually, he reached out his hand to stroke her head and sighed. Be obedient. But, are we able to escape? Yu Yan was silent for a moment. Believe in your master. We can definitely. Is that so? A cold voice resounded, and Yu Yan suddenly stopped. Not far in front of them, a black figure was standing in midair. There was no sword beneath his feet, nor was there any mystic artifact. Just like that, he stood in midair. Dressed entirely in black, his hands were placed behind his back. Clearly he did not emit any pressure, yet she could feel that oppressive aura. Lightly sweeping his gaze over, Zhu Yao once again felt that bone-piercing chill, as though even her heart was being frozen. Sovereign Yu Yan? He spat out these 4 words, yet his tone did not contain the slightest bit of emotion, as though these were completely meaningless words. Yu Yan did not reply, and simply frowned. He stared at her for a moment, yet she could sense a cautiousness that he had never shown before. In an instant, he slowly released Zhu Yao, who was in front of him. What are you trying to do? Zhu Yao instantly panicked, as she reflexively grabbed onto his collar. You want to chase me away? Be obedient. However, he simply reached out his hand and patted on her head. The hell? Zhu Yao seemed to want to curse out. Did he have to display some great sentiment of sacrificing himself to save others at this moment? Since we can't beat him in a duel, we can gang up on him. Don't even think about it. You're the one who should leave. After I die, I can still. Before she could even finish, Yu Yan suddenly tapped on her forehead. Zhu Yao simply felt the divine energy in her entire body dissipating, and she instantly turned back into a piece of jade. The hell? Yu Yan forcefully threw her backwards and solemnly said, Sesame. Sesame leaped out of the spiritual beast's sack and caught Zhu Yao, who was thrown out by Yu Yan, in its mouth. Sesame, let go of me. However, as though Sesame could not hear her words, it continued to fly in the direction of the lightning divine hall. As for that black-clothed man, it was as though he could not see them at all, as he stood on the spot without moving. Sesame, are you rebelling? Since when did you listen to Master's words this much? Zhu Yao's heart burned with anxiety, yet she was getting further and further away. When she turned to look, she could only see 2 figures facing each other within the sky filled with lightning sparks. Master! Suddenly, the black figure who had been treating her as though she was nothing moved, as he turned to look in the direction Zhu Yao left. In an instant, Zhu Yao simply felt an immense pressure rushing towards her divine sense. She felt as though her entire body was about to be torn apart by that pressure, and her entire divine sense was in incomparable pain. Even her jade-like body was beginning to shatter. Chapter 161. Sesame, hurry and return. Zhu Yao's heart turned cold, and for a moment, she even had the thought of killing Sesame. You hurry and return, do you hear me? That person, was basically not a deity, nor was he a deity practitioner. The pressure she felt just now was exactly the same as the one she felt from Phantom. He was a demon. Sesame. She had to return and warn her master. Pig Ninja. Sesame held Zhu Yao in its mouth, yet its feet did not stop. It could only stammer out a reply. I'm a pigman. After saying that, Zhu Yao's face was already drenched by its saliva. Will you die if you transform and catch me? Why do you have to bite me? Zhu Yao had received the malice of the entire universe. It seemed like her master had long discussed with Sesame in the dimensional space, and it would not listen to her. Zhu Yao had no choice but to look within her divine sense, open up the sealed divine sense, and guide the divine energy in the space to materialize. Tao Manfeng sensed the abnormality of the divine aura, and began to walk around in the space. She had already stayed in there for a day, so she naturally knew that this place was a land of death, and there was basically no exit. Even though such a dense amount of spirit energy allowed her to successfully break through to the Xian immortal stage, it was completely useless if she couldn't get out. Who are you? What is this place? Zhu Yao did not have the time to care about this little bitch. Automatically ignoring her shouts, She desperately guided divine energy out of her divine sense. The entire piece of jade emitted a red light. Sesame was caught off guard for a moment, and his tongue was scalded. He had no choice but to spit Zhu Yao out. The red light shone brightly. Not long after, riding on a sword, a Zhu Yao with a face full of saliva appeared. She swept her gaze over, and Sesame instantly shrunk its head. "I'll deal with you later." Zhu Yao fiercely glared at a certain unreliable beast, and then flew to the ground. She did not stop drawing out divine energy. The immortal qi in his body was rising, directly rising from Xian Immortal Intermediate Stage to Xian Immortal Advanced Stage, and then to the Great Circle. That familiar pain once again resounded. This time, however, Zhu Yao did not have the time to care about this. The speed at which she guided the divine energy did not slow down, instead it increased. All the meridians in his body were about to burst, and faint traces of blood could be seen on his body. His white robe was dyed red. Zhu Yao did not dare to stop. He only hoped. Faster, a little faster. She had to remind her master. Even if she couldn't help, she couldn't be a burden. Therefore he had to increase his cultivation. Finally, she seemed to hear it in her ears. There was a clink, the sound of something breaking. A large amount of immortal energy rushed into his body. A golden immortal. Zhu Yao closed her divine sense and stood up. He was too lazy to care about the saliva and blood all over his body. Let's return. Zhu Yao summoned her own divine sword and flew up. Just as she was about to head in the direction she had come from, the space in front of her distorted. In the blink of an eye, a familiar black figure appeared in front of her. That devil! How could this be? Where's my master? Zhu Yao's heart twitched, and she was momentarily flustered. They had only left for a short while, so how could her master possibly be here? Impossible. What did you do to my master? He didn't answer and continued to stare at her with that chilling gaze. That familiar pressure attacked her again. This time, she was prepared and didn't get hurt. Zhu Yao understood that she wasn't his match, so she had no choice but to circulate all of her divine energy and summon countless lightning sparks. However, his figure simply flashed, and Zhu Yao instantly found it hard to breathe. A bone-chilling cold hand was already gripping onto her neck. All of the immortal energy she had circulated earlier was instantly suppressed back into her body, and instead, she suffered a backlash. She simply felt a fishy sweetness in her mouth, and blood endlessly spat out from the corner of her lips. Mistress! Sesame grew anxious and pounced towards him. However, before it could even touch the corner of his robes, it was sent flying by a ray of black light, and with a loud bang, it fell to the ground. It struggled to climb up, but it was instantly pressed onto the ground by a pressure. Even its wings had been forcefully snapped. The skin on its body split open inch by inch, and blood flowed onto the ground. Sesame! Zhu Yao grew anxious. Yet she was completely unable to resist. Even though her neck was clearly being gripped, she couldn't move her entire body. This devil was even stronger than Phantom. He carried her just like that, without any emotions or emotions. He did not continue to exert force, nor did he let go of her. Even though they were so close, she was still unable to see his face clearly. Even when she thought that he would strangle her to death just like that, he suddenly spoke. He suddenly opened his mouth, and his voice was still flat and flat. "You're his disciple." Zhu Yao struggled to speak out. The depths of her heart ached. Thinking about her master whose fate was unknown, she could no longer suppress the panic in her heart. If anything happens to master, this old lady here will have the entire world bury him. Suddenly, the rumbling of thunder resounded from afar, and even the sky had completely darkened. A loud dragon roar resounded, and a white lightning dragon seemed to be dancing amidst the thunderclouds. It was the incarnation of her master's sword intent. He was fine. Zhu Yao's tense nerves instantly relaxed. Then was this person in front of her a devil's clone? He stared fixedly at her, and in an instant, that bone-piercing chill grew stronger. He once again asked, "You're his disciple?" Zhu Yao desperately forced herself to calm down. She couldn't be anxious. His clone was already this strong. If he were to return to his main body, Her master would only be in even more danger. She had to stall him, or destroy him. However, her current cultivation was only at the gold deity level. How was she supposed to harm him? You're his disciple? He asked again. His voice was the same as before, calm to the point where there was not even a hint of undulation, as though it was an electronic voice synthesized by a modern computer. She had no choice but to risk it. Zhu Yao released her divine sense, and even expanded it to its limitless size. She expanded the entire space, and squeezed all of the divine energy together. After doing all of this, she struggled up, and did her best to spell out a single word. Yes. The black-clothed man paused for a moment. He tilted his head, as though he was confirming her words. A moment later he replied, "Oh, then you must die." His hand suddenly tightened, and Zhu Yao felt as though she could hear the sound of bones shattering. All of her aura was blocked, and in the next moment, she was about to shatter. Zhu Yao's mind shook, and she instantly released all of the divine energy's suppression. Her entire body emitted a white light. Self-destruct. The black-clothed man saw through her intentions, yet he did not have the intention to distance himself at all, as though he did not place her self-destruction in his eyes at all. Instead, his hand tightened even more. "I want you to not care." Zhu Yao desperately expanded her divine energy, and circulated all of the divine energy in the entire space. Indeed, self-destructing her divine sense was completely unable to harm a devil. However, she had a space filled with divine energy in her divine sense. If she were to self-destruct the space as well, she did not believe that she would not be able to kill a clone. The white light on Zhu Yao's body grew even brighter. The devil finally sensed the anomaly as well, and released his devilic energy to attack her divine sense. Zhu Yao was courting death in the first place, so how could she possibly hold back? Instead, she grabbed onto his hand, and fixed his body in place. "You're courting death." The devil's voice finally regained its composure, though it was even colder than before. A black light flashed on his hand, as though he was going to snap her neck and stop her self-destruction. Zhu Yao's divine energy, however, had already finished expanding. Now was the time. With a thought, half of her divine energy had already exploded. However, under the strength of his hand, with a poo sound, she spat out a mouthful of blood. In an instant, the devilic energy on his face was broken, revealing a completely expressionless face. Zhu Yao suddenly widened her eyes, and was stunned. Yuing. When her words fell, the pair of cold eyes on the expressionless face instantly widened. In the next moment, everything was swallowed by the white light. A familiar conversation window once again appeared in front of her eyes. "Congratulations, you have once again died completely. Please make your choice. Resurrect or have a chat or give a thumbs up to the illustrious and mighty Realm Spirit." What's with this increasingly shameless conversation window? Realm Spirit, you've been on Weibo too much, haven't you? With a darkened expression, Zhu Yao clicked on the second option. Have a chat. In the next moment, she once again arrived in that pitch-black, empty space. This time, there was no need for her to shout, as Realm Spirit's QQ interface popped out by itself. Other than the QQ chat at the side being replaced by a man, there were no other changes. Realm Spirit. Yo, brave young lady. Long time no see. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She took a deep breath, and only then did she resist the urge to rush forward and beat him up. Realm Spirit, just what's going on? Don't you think you should give me an explanation? Realm Spirit. Yeah, what's wrong, young lady? If there's something you're unhappy about, say it out, and let me be happy. Can you be even more infuriating? Zhu Yao glared at him. Back in the modern era, why didn't she feel that this person was so infuriating? He was a rather decent person, so why did he suddenly go crazy the moment she transmigrated? I'm talking about Yuing. What's going on with Yuing? Why is he in the divine realm? And he even turned into a devil? She clearly remembered that when Yuing came out from the ice, he was just a regular human child. Forget about being a devil, he did not even have the slightest bit of devilic energy. And although he possessed pentaspirit veins, he could still use spiritual energy to cultivate. He was a good child with a proper, serious, and hard-working bloodline. Could it be he's possessed by that damned rabbit? That devil that had entered the rabbit deity's body had already left that divine body and taken over little Yu Ying's body? That devil was a little too invincible, right? Realm spirit. That's not it. Bunchan is doing fine in the lower realm. There's no way she wants to ascend. Realm spirit sent her a picture. In the picture, there was a man dressed in a dark green robe, lying on a mountain of carrots. He was rolling around on the ground, with an expression as though he had no regrets in his life. MN looking so annoying, it's indeed that damned rabbit. Then what's going on? Is that Yu Ying himself? Realm spirit. I don't know either. However, the devil will definitely appear in the world. This is the cycle of the heavenly Tao, and it cannot be avoided. Just like how the God race has already awakened as well. God race. Zhu Yao was startled. You're talking about the dragon race? It couldn't be when she turned into a dragon back then, right? Realm spirit. Not only the dragon race, young lady, the 4 divine beasts will all awaken. How did you know? Zhu Yao suspiciously looked at the screen. She was becoming more and more curious about Realm Spirit's identity. Even in the divine realm, there might not be anyone who knew about this, right? Realm Spirit. Because the prophecy in the heavenly revelation had long been written. Inheriting the Lord's orders, the gods and devils will both descend. The ancient era will begin, the responsibility of the 3 realms will be fulfilled, and the eternal sacred ground will be created. Chapter 162. Realm Spirit. You will know about Tianqi in the future. You have to trust me. Trust my ass. The last time he said this, he even said that he would give a character that everyone loved. What happened in the end? Realm Spirit. Actually, there was an accident this time. Due to the large hole being repaired, it caused a short period of spatial turbulence, causing space-time to become chaotic. Thus, a crack appeared in the 3 realms. Crack. Zhu Yao suddenly recalled the scene at the bazaar. In the beginning, she had even thought that it was done by that devil, but it seemed like that was not the case. Are you talking about the spirit qi in the immortal world? What's going on? Realm Spirit. Young girl, it's caused by your body exploding. I self-destructed after that. The incident at the market had happened before. Realm Spirit. Not this time, but last time. Last time. Zhu Yao was startled, as she widened her eyes in disbelief. You're talking about that time when I turned into a dragon and swallowed the world extermination talisman? That was clearly a very long time ago. Wait, space-time disorder. You're saying that the explosion of the world annihilation talisman affected time? Realm Spirit, correct. Zhu Yao was in a daze. In other words, her resurrection this time basically did not come to the future, but to the past. Hence, when Sesame said that it sensed her aura within the white light, it was because that spiritual energy was hers in the first place. At that time, she was in the lower realm swallowing the world annihilation talisman. She suddenly had a strange feeling. You should at least give me a heads up and remind me. If she had known that it would be so troublesome, she would have stopped others from taking the world annihilation talisman from the upper realm. She clearly remembered that that talisman was the most valuable treasure of their lightning divine hall. Realm Spirit. There are some things I can't predict, young lady. Zhu Yao sank into silence. Indeed, she was a little too reliant on Realm Spirit. Then who is the bug this time? She had been in the immortal world for so long this time. She didn't see a single person with a bug on their face. Logically speaking, Realm Spirit wouldn't let her reincarnate into the immortal realm for no reason. Why don't I see any of them? Or did she miss something? Realm Spirit. The bug appeared a long time ago. He appeared? She thought back carefully. It was impossible. Realm Spirit. The picture shows the truth. After Realm Spirit said this, a pop-up window suddenly appeared on the screen. It was the interface of a video call, and on top of the pitch-black interface, there was only a triangular play button that was facing right. Zhu Yao habitually clicked on it. 2 figures appeared on the screen. One was her, and the other was the man in black who was strangling her neck. Was this the scene before she died? Her body was glowing with white light. Soon it occupied the entire screen. She was self-destructing. But in the next moment, the moment the white light exploded, half of it suddenly returned to her body. That should be the instant of hesitation when she saw Yuing. Therefore, only half of the energy was detonated. However, this half of the immortal chi was enough to blow her and that demon into pieces. After the white light, it was a scorched forest and a huge crater on the ground. Zhu Yao was just wondering why Realm Spirit was showing her this. Suddenly, a reflective object flashed in the air. Something fell straight into the hole that had been blasted open. Zhu Yao took a closer look and realized that it was a jade pendant that was missing half of its original form. She was dead. Her original form was still there? Was it because she did not completely detonate the space? Before she could figure it out, that half of the jade pendant suddenly emitted out a red light, and a figure flew out from the jade pendant. Dressed in a green long dress, her face was still filled with fear that had yet to fade. Little bitch. She actually came out? Tao Manfeng looked at her surroundings. She was frightened by her surroundings. Lowering her head, she looked at the divine jade on the ground. After hesitating for a moment, she could not help but pick it up, summoned her weapon, and flew away on her sword. What's the meaning of this? Zhu Yao did not understand why Realm Spirit was showing her this. Realm Spirit, continue watching, dear. Zhu Yao turned around and seriously stared at the screen. It was still Tao Manfeng who was currently flying on her sword. Suddenly, the camera zoomed in and was fixed on the divine jade in her hands. Amen, this is my corpse. What's next? Was he purposely letting her look at her corpse? Realm Spirit, look carefully. Realm Spirit said again. Suddenly, a mouse cursor appeared on the screen, moving to her corpse. Then it selected the entire piece of jade and zoomed in by a dozen times. In an instant, the entire screen was filled with jade. A white jade body and a carved jade face. It was a familiar look. Was there anything special about it? Just as she was about to ask, the mouse cursor suddenly turned into a large pencil drawing, and stroke by stroke, it drew out a black line along the carved shape of the jade pendant. A moment later, the two letters Bu appeared on the jade surface. Bu. Ba. Zhu Yao fiercely widened her eyes and pointed at herself a little in disbelief. I'm a bug? You're saying the bug this time is me? Then wouldn't it be fine if she did not reincarnate? What was the meaning of making such a long and arduous trip? Are you playing with me? Realm Spirit. To be precise, it's not you but that piece of jade. Your existence merely allowed the jade to possess a spiritual sense. You're saying this dimensional space existed in the first place? Realm Spirit. Nodding. Then you should have said so earlier. If I had known earlier, I would have self-destructed right from the start. Was there a need to go through so much trouble? Indeed, that dimensional space of hers was a heaven-defying existence. The dense divine energy inside, and that spiritual spring with unknown effects. Even Tao Manfeng had risen to the level of a profound deity in just a single day. And didn't I have that precognitive dream in the past? Why didn't I have it this time? Realm Spirit, I've said it before. Because of the space-time disorder, ahem, you reincarnated a little early, so you have yet to meet the conditions to trigger the storyline. In other words, I've wasted my life this time? Also, what the hell are the conditions to trigger the storyline? Are you treating this as a game? And there's even a hidden mission? Realm Spirit, don't mind these details. As if I don't mind. Ho, also, that jade's dimensional space can't possibly still exist, right? Realm Spirit. Hee. I can't be going to look for the corpse from before, right? Realm Spirit. Ho, the weather today isn't bad. Wasn't the change of topic a little too obvious? Forget it. Where's my master and Sesame? How are they? Back then, she was only concerned with holding back that devil's clone. She wondered if her master managed to escape after she self-destructed. Realm Spirit did not hesitate this time. That video screen once again popped out. The image once again appeared the huge crater after she self-destructed. Sesame was lying not too far away from the crater. His entire body was covered in blood, though his chest was slightly rising and falling. It seemed like his injuries were very heavy. A moment later, a white figure flew down from the sky. Master! Zhu Yao could not help but shout out. Yet, she heaved a heavy sigh of relief in the depths of her heart. He was fine. His clothes were a little messy. Evidently, he had just experienced a fierce battle. Yet his expression was terrifyingly dark, and his hands were tightly clenched. Zhu Yao had never seen her master like this before. It was as if he was going to do something terrifying in the next moment. He stared straight at the crater for a moment, and the emotions in his eyes were a little chaotic. After a long while, he gently closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, he had already returned to his usual calm self. He turned around and glanced at Sesame, who had already fainted on the ground. With a wave of his hand, he kept it into his spiritual pet pouch. In a flash, he disappeared from where he stood. Zhu Yao could not describe what she was feeling in her heart. Logically speaking, she should be happy that her master and Sesame were fine. However, the expression her master had when he looked at the crater earlier kept replaying in her mind. For some reason, she felt an indescribable emotion surging from the depths of her heart. It was stuffy and she could not breathe. Realm Spirit. O young maiden, are you ready? Zhu Yao raised her head and glanced at that trembling conversation window. Taking a deep breath, she tossed away that indescribable emotion. What will I turn into this time? It can't be that I don't even have a human form again, right? Realm Spirit, don't worry, young maiden. I guarantee that this time will be very normal. And as a reward, I'll give you a benefit. What benefit? It can't be a scam, right? Realm Spirit. Now, it's time to witness a miracle. Pooey, it's time to fix the bug. Go on, brave young maiden. Wait a minute, explain yourself first, hey. She was really afraid of being scammed. Realm Spirit's chat window suddenly disappeared with a ding, and a familiar loading bar appeared in front of her. However, this time, it was as though the loading bar was connected to 100 megabytes optical fiber, as it finished loading in an instant. She was immediately plunged into darkness. The hell? She was currently anxiously thinking about what she would turn into. Suddenly, in the darkness, a row of red words appeared. Receiving benefits so fast? Before Zhu Yao could even feel shocked, she had already fallen into a familiar dream. It was actually a precognitive dream that had been delayed for a very long time. This time was no exception. She still saw a person's life. And this her was someone she was familiar with. Her name was Emociensian. The beginning of the story was very ordinary, and it basically belonged to the daily life of a senior martial brother and junior martial sister. Emociensian was a disciple with a mutated wind spirit vein. Her aptitude was extraordinary, and she was fancied by a demigod sovereign of the sect, and was taken in as a personal succeeding disciple. And her senior martial brother, Su Nuyen, was the eldest disciple of the sect master. He possessed the metal and fire dual spirit veins. Although he wasn't a personal succeeding disciple, he was still an extremely valued disciple. Before Emociensian entered the sect, his cultivation was already at the Azoth core level. When Emociensian entered the sect, she was not even 5 years old. Hence, this eldest senior martial brother began the path of grooming a lowly. Emociensian was practically brought up by him, and as he brought her along, love was brought out. However, Emociensian's master did not agree to this marriage. In any case, he had his eyes on another sect, which was similarly a genius with a mutated ice spirit vein. Hence, for the sake of love, this young maiden would rather die than comply. She firmly believed that her senior martial brother was her true love, and naturally, she even experienced a period of running away from home, eloping under the moon, and other necessary events. The young maiden's master had no choice, and could only grant the two of them. And after experiencing hardships, the two of them had indeed lived a blissful life. Su Nuyen's appearance was handsome, and his cultivation was at the top amongst his peers as well. Not long after he and Emociensian became dual cultivator partners, he had already formed his nascent soul. Hence, he attracted many female practitioners to fall in love with him. However, he remained the same towards Emociensian, never abandoning her, and treating her like a pearl or a treasure. Even after Emociensian's cultivation had reached a bottleneck, and had remained at the early stages of nascent soul, unable to advance even an inch, he had never felt the slightest bit of disdain towards her. Looking at that deep and unwavering feelings, Zhu Yao could not help but want to give them an honorary certificate of model couple. If it wasn't for the ascension plot. Chapter 163. As her senior brother, Su Nuyen ascended. When he ascended, he affectionately told Mo Xianxian that he hoped that she could ascend as soon as possible, and then the two of them would reunite in the heavens. And Mo Xianxian, who had been stuck at the nascent soul paragon, due to his encouragement, adding the epiphany she received from the heavenly light of ascension, her cultivation began to rise greatly, and she broke through into the demigod realm. In just over 1,000 years, she ascended to find her husband to continue their relationship. Like every newly ascended immortal, she became the most inconspicuous one. Therefore, she wholeheartedly wanted to find her husband, but without any connections or background, it was difficult for her to move a single step in the celestial world. More importantly, after asking around for a period of time, she suddenly started to be hunted down. Zhu Yao was clear about what happened after that. In order to protect herself, she joined Advent Cloud Hall. But even so, those schemes and plots did not stop. Instead, they increased in number. She also wanted to find out the truth, but she was just an earth immortal. How could she possibly find out? Mo Xianxian was not stupid, rather, she was extremely intelligent, and understood that someone was targeting her. Thus, while avoiding these dangers, she cultivated with all her might. His days could be said to be thrilling. She broke through to the mystic celestial stage, and was taken in by a Stygian celestial cultivator in the sect. He became an elite disciple of Advent Cloud Hall. She had also been trying to find out who the person behind the scenes was, and when the sect master of Fluorescent Wind sect was going to host his daughter's dual cultivator ceremony, she followed her master to attend the ceremony. However, she found out that the son-in-law of the sect master was actually the husband that she could not find anywhere. June. No matter how many assassinations and schemes she had suffered after she ascended to the upper realm, it was not as heartbreaking as her lover's betrayal. Thus, under his impulse, he drew his sword and charged towards Su Nuyen, who was dressed in a new set of clothes. She scolded him for being heartless. She took out the token of love they had given each other that day and questioned him loudly. She never expected that this action of hers, not only did she not receive Su Nuyen's reply, she had instead completely enraged Fluorescent Wind sect master Yin Shi. Anxious to protect her daughter, she immediately took action. Although she did not directly take Mo Xianxian's life, she had destroyed the foundation of her cultivation. Not only did her cultivation fall to the early stages of the earth deity level, it would be even harder for her to raise it in the future. This was not bad. She had thought that it would be her Stygian immortal master. In order to maintain peace with Fluorescent Wind sect on the surface, she was actually directly expelled from Advent Cloud Hall. In an instant, she had turned into a street rat that everyone in the divine realm wanted to beat up. Mo Xianxian, who had offended two great powers at the same time, no longer had a place to stay in the divine realm. There were quite a few loose immortals as well. In order to curry favor with Fluorescent Wind sect, they went so far as to hunt and target her. Mo Xianxian was a peak-grade genius sought after by everyone in the lower realm. Now she had to hide from place to place. This kind of difference almost drove her crazy, especially when she was betrayed by the person she loved. It made her hate him even more. However, she was not fated to die. Once, when she was being pursued by a Fluorescent Wind sect disciple, she met a female immortal, who also wanted to take her life. She desperately escaped to a forbidden area at the edge of the demon immortal realm, where no immortal techniques worked. Instead, she used brute force to kill that female immortal. Her chest was also heavily injured and blood flowed out continuously. The blood from his heart accidentally dripped onto a piece of immortal jade on the female immortal's body. The next moment, she arrived in a foreign land. That place was filled with dense divine energy, and precious divine herbs and spiritual trees could be found everywhere. And she even discovered a spiritual spring. Not only did the water inside heal her injuries, it even restored her foundation, which was injured by the sect master of Fluorescent Wind sect back then. After Mo Xianxian obtained a cheat like this, Her cultivation naturally rose greatly. However, in just a few months' time, she had once again recovered her cultivation as a profound deity. However, she could only enter that space for 6 hours every day, otherwise her cultivation would rise even faster. She had initially wanted to find a place to hide, and when her cultivation had risen, she would come back for revenge. However, her whereabouts were still tracked down. After a fierce battle, she was saved by an unfamiliar man. When she arrived at a safe place, she found out that the one who saved her was actually her former husband, Su Nuyen. This made Emo Xianxian extremely sad and furious, as she drew her sword and attacked. However, Su Nuyen did not dodge and took her attack head-on. He sincerely begged for her forgiveness and told her the truth of what happened. Su Nuyen said that he basically did not like the sect master's daughter, In Xian, and only loved Emo Xianxian. The reason why he married her was because he had no other choice. Back then, after he ascended to the higher realm, he joined Fluorescent Wind sect. Due to his outstanding aptitude, he was taken in as a chamber disciple by the previous sect master, and was nurtured in every possible way. However, he never expected that the reason why the previous sect master treated him this way was to find someone for his daughter with trash aptitude to rely on. The previous sect master's cultivation was already at the high deity level, and would soon enter the Lightning Divine Tower. However, his wife and daughter were still staying in Fluorescent Wind sect, and the moment he entered the tower, he would definitely attract a lot of trouble for them. Hence he chose Su Nuyen. Su Nuyen said that after he found out about all of this, he had already expressed to the previous sect master that he already had a dual cultivation partner. However, the sect master believed that he had ascended for a long time, and that Emo Xianxian was only at the nascent soul stage back then. So her lifespan must have come to an end. Marrying his daughter again wouldn't be considered as going back on his word. In the beginning, Su Nuyen resolutely refused, and bitterly waited for Emo Xianxian for 1,000 years. Later on, the previous sect master entered the Lightning Divine Tower, and his master's wife took over the position of sect master. She told him that she had already sent people down to the lower realm to investigate, and that Emo Xianxian had long fallen, and did not become a deity. Furthermore, she once again brought up the matter of Su Nuyen marrying his own daughter. Helpless, he agreed to it. However, he never expected that it was all a lie. In reality, Emo Xianxian had already ascended, and the dignified sect master of Fluorescent Wind sect, in order to hide this matter from him, his master's wife had actually secretly sent people to kill his first wife. Everything that Emo Xianxian encountered after she ascended to the higher realm were all done by her. Only when Emo Xianxian appeared in front of him that day, did he find out about all of this. Seeing Emo Xianxian injured, his heart was filled with endless grief and indignation, and he could not wait to fight Inshur to the death. However, he knew that with his cultivation, he was basically not her match. Hence, he had no choice but to grit his teeth and endure it. On one hand, he was trying to paralyze them, while on the other hand, he was secretly searching for Emo Xianxian's whereabouts. When he had the ability, he would take revenge. When Emo Xianxian heard his words, she calmed down as well. Recalling the scene in Fluorescent Wind sect earlier, it seemed like Su Nuyen was indeed very shocked, and he did not resist her accusations and attacks either. In her heart, she had already believed most of it. Hence, the misunderstanding between the two was resolved. Emo Xianxian now hated the mother and daughter of Fluorescent Wind sect to the bone. Especially that woman called In Xian, Su Nuyen's current trash wife. In the following storyline, it basically belonged to the path of the cannon fodder's counterattack, or the main wife's rise. Emo Xianxian borrowed the dimensional space, her cultivation sword. Although she was still suspicious of Su Nuyen, after he risked his life to save her multiple times, the knot in her heart was slowly dispelled. Together with Su Nuyen, they began to take revenge on the sect master of Fluorescent Wind sect, Inshur, and her daughter, In Xian. They also borrowed some of the divine herbs and spiritual trees in the dimensional space to gain the hearts of many people. In the end, during the invasion of a demonic immortal, they seized the opportunity to slaughter their way into Fluorescent Wind sect, killed the mother and daughter, and successfully took over Fluorescent Wind sect. Su Nuyen took over as the sect master of Fluorescent Wind sect, and he once again married Mo Xianxian into the sect in a grand manner. The two lovers finally got married. Zhu Yao patiently watched until the end. She frowned. On the surface, it was a happy ending, and there wasn't anything bad about it. The two lovers finally walked together after experiencing countless hardships. The only thing she felt regretful about was the one that Mo Xianxian hated to the bone. The third party that tried to steal her husband. Yet from the start to the end, she did not appear in the scene at all. That's right. That heavyweight female antagonist, the woman who nearly caused Mo Xianxian's tragedy in life. In Mo Xianxian's long lifetime of memories, she actually did not appear even once. Even her mother, the sect master of Fluorescent Wind sect, Yin had shown her face twice, while she, the genuine third party, did not even have a back view. In other words, Mo Xianxian had never seen how this love rival of hers looked like. The only information she received was that Yin Xian's talent was an unprecedented trash, and her physique was so weak that she could only rely on Fluorescent Wind sect's divine vein to nurture her. She had always been living in Fluorescent Wind sect's upper spiritual mountain, and had never left the sect. Later on, when Mo Xianxian slaughtered her way into the sect, she did not enter to take a look either, and simply destroyed it along with the upper spiritual mountain. She did not even have the chance to make an appearance. Just where did she draw such a huge hatred from? Zhu Yao silently lit a candle for this female antagonist who had the least sense of existence in history. She also began to have many questions towards this seemingly beautiful main wife's counterattack drama. More importantly, in this one-sided battle, she was completely unable to see where the bug was. Just what was she trying to do? Just as she was puzzled, the scene in front of her suddenly changed. Fluorescent Wind sect, which was still a scene of prosperity earlier, was suddenly surrounded by raging flames. Corpses were strewn everywhere, and blood flowed like a river. The entire Fluorescent Wind sect was in a deathly silence. No, not just Fluorescent Wind sect. Her field of vision slowly expanded, and she looked at the entire Divine Realm continent. Everywhere was burning with raging flames, and they did not extinguish even after a long while. For a moment, Zhu Yao was a little unable to react. Just what kind of godly twist was this? What happened in the middle of this, hey? Why did the Divine Realm become like this before she even saw anything? Suddenly, she heard a loud and long cry. She raised her head to look, only to see 4 to 5 gigantic birds that were emitting raging flames were currently flapping their wings in the sky. They seemed to be extremely furious, as the raging flames on their bodies grew stronger. Every time they flapped their wings, a large fire source would be ignited on the ground. Zhu Yao was startled. These were phoenixes. In the next moment, she simply felt her vision turning black, as she once again sank into darkness. When she once again opened her eyes, Zhu Yao felt her entire body stiffening. Her first reaction was, it's over. Realm Spirit must have given her some sort of death-seeking avatar again. She laid on the ground for a long while, and looked at her surroundings for a moment. She realized that her surroundings were decorated in an antique style, and should be a bedroom. And looking at the colors and patterns, it should be a woman's bedchamber, and she was currently lying on the bed. She waited for a moment, and when she could slightly feel her 4 limbs, she heaved a heavy sigh of relief. Good. At the very least, she was human this time. She exerted some strength, and just as she was about to try moving her numb fingers, the door was pushed open with a creaking sound. A little girl dressed in a pink dress walked in, and she was even carrying a basin of water in her hands. Hi. Zhu Yao took the initiative to greet her. Probably because she had not spoken for a long time, her voice was so hoarse that even she herself was shocked. I say, with a clang, the basin in the little girl's hands instantly fell onto the ground, and the water inside flowed all over the ground. The corner of her lips twitched, as she looked at Zhu Yao with a face filled with shock. Even her voice was trembling. Me. Miss. The corner of Zhu Yao's lips twitched. She had a misconception that her soul had crossed into an ancient novel. The moment she opened her eyes, a maidservant shouted out in a fluster. Miss had woken up. As expected, that little girl dutifully rushed out, and shouted out loudly. Miss is alive. What do you mean by alive? At the very least, you should shout according to the script, hey. In the next moment, she simply felt a gust of wind blowing past, and a woman instantly appeared in the room. She looked like a deity, and her hair was combed into a woman's bun. She looked a little familiar. The middle-aged woman stared straight at her with widened eyes, and she did not even blink. Zhu Yao felt a little uncomfortable from her stare, and could only awkwardly smile. May I ask who you are? The moment her words came out, the middle-aged woman actually began to shed tears. Like beans pouring out. She could not stop them no matter how hard she tried. Zhu Yao was shocked, as she advised with a hoarse voice. You don't cry, all right? Not only did the middle-aged woman's tears not stop, they instead flowed even more fiercely. She pounced towards Zhu Yao, hugged Zhu Yao, and desperately stuffed her into her embrace. Zhu Yao was instantly suffocated by the 2 lumps of flesh in front of her chest. Miss, even if you can't think things through, you don't have to suffocate me to death. Who? Breathe, she suddenly cried out, and cried out. My Enexian, you're finally awake. What did you call me? Say it again. That you're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.